This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, gang? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you, and we got a packed one today. Lots to get to, particularly considering the big move the Vancouver Canucks made in picking up Elias Lindholm last night. We'll talk about the significance of that to the Canucks, but also the significance of that to teams like the Winnipeg Jets, who were believed to have had interest in Elias Lindholm, and where that leaves the old trade bait board moving forward after Pierre Levine jumped in and got at it early. Scott Billeck's going to pop on first. Ken Wiebe, looking forward to talking to Wiebe, taking some time out of his Mexican vacation to jump on with us. We'll see what he has to say about that, and Ken's thoughts on where the Jets might turn. And to be honest, we'll get Ken's take on just how interested and how willing the Winnipeg Jets were in Lindholm, as well as what might have been the deal breaker for Vancouver to make it. It was a significant package. We'll get into it in just a minute. Huge night locally for the hoop scene, because it's the Duckworth Challenge, and Bisons and Westmen going at it at Duckworth tonight, at U of M and IGAC on Saturday. The men's teams are in a dead heat at 11 and 5. Huge series for both clubs. I know we talked about it on the show last year, but I mean, that one game playoff between the two teams last year, won by the Westmen in an upset to get to the Nationals for the first time in almost 30 years. I think it, in a lot of ways, set the table for the success of the Seabears. And obviously, the Seabears season was incredible. Sean Moranin, star of the Westmen, was with the Seabears on the practice squad all year. And Simon Hildebrand from the Bisons was a huge part of the team's success. They'll be going head-to-head tonight. And our old pal Joey Slattery, Slats, is going to come on. He'll be doing color for the game tonight. So we'll talk a little hoops, and we will have Susanne Dandenault pop by for a Sport Manitoba Takes a Community to play a little bit later on. A lot of hockey talk, and we'll get into a little free agency CFL-style buzz coming up in just a couple minutes. Let me give a big shout-out to all of our sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Coolbet Canada just finished a fun episode talking about the NHL futures that are up right now with Coolbet now that we're at the All-Star break. Now, of course, our friends at Princess Auto, Little Brown Jug, the Winnipeg Jets, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Sport Manitoba, supported by Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries, Aikens Lake, Wallace & Wallace, Modern Men Barbershops, F Apparel, Manitoba Battery, and Canadian Club. Let's get Michael Remis in here and get this show on the road. Remo, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm feeling good. I'm just here counting down to, first thing I'm doing is crossing names off the trade bait board after we had the big deal last night, but I'm just counting down to NHL All Star Thursday night. I think with no other games on, I have no choice. I'm locked in. I'll be tuning into the draft. When's Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuck getting picked? What kind of input will celebrity coach Will Arnett have? I guess that's what I'm counting down to. I'll probably be folding laundry as well. But yeah, I'm feeling good. Nice weather out. That helps. Lots going on.
It's great outside. It is great outside.
Yeah.
Not particularly sunny, but if it's going to be above zero for the first day of February, we will take it. Listen, just before we get into this, the trade talk and some CFL free agency, shout out to everybody in chat. Great to see you all, and shout out to you podcast listeners. Now, if you were with us at the end of the program yesterday, we mentioned an event that we're involved in with our friends at Canadian Club and the Winnipeg Whiskey Festival. And It is the Canadian Whiskey Masterclass. Now, we put out information on this to the WST newsletter subscribers last night. But the bottom line is this. The event is 3 weeks today, I guess. Or sorry, 4 weeks today. February 29th. It is at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame. Tickets are $50. It is an incredibly limited number of tickets out. I think the capacity for the event is 40. And I know that Canadian Club and the Sports Hall of Fame had a few tickets that they need to hold back. So we probably are looking at 30 seats or so available for them. I already shout out to Slobo, who DM'd me last night, who was listening. He said, I've been looking for this link. I thought I was on the mailing list. Maybe I'm not. Can you let me know? And he immediately went out and bought 4. The way things are going to work is we're going to get everyone there after work. We're going to get things going in and around 6 to begin the whiskey tasting. The Jets are playing the Dallas Stars that night, so we're going to have a massive screen with sound on it. We'll watch the game, the intermission, some more whiskey masterclass from, and we've got some incredible guests, including a 36-year Canadian Club ambassador telling us all about it. They'll have a nice, personal charcuterie for everyone from DeLuca's, I believe. Bottom line is, if you want to join us for this, and we would love to see you there, we wanted to get it out to Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners from the podcast and YouTubers first. But these are probably going to go within the day. The Whiskey Fest events always do. They've been kind enough to sort of give us everything that wasn't held right off the bat for WST listeners to sort of make it a combo WST event along with Canadian Club and the Winnipeg Whiskey Festival. So here's what you need to know. If you're with us on YouTube right now, or you're watching afterwards on YouTube, there's a link in the description for the event. Remo, right now, if you want, maybe just throw it right out in the chat so people can do it. And if you do want to go to winnipegsportstalk.com, our website, at the top, click whiskey, and just grab your tickets for it. It sort of a really unique, exclusive event that we've got the opportunity to do it. An incredible venue, doing it with John Waldman and the folks down at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame. And I can't wait. I can't wait for this. Be nice to. And again, we won't have to dress up. It's a combo Jet game watch party as well as the whiskey tasting, so you can throw a jersey on if you want. But if you are into whiskey, like learning about it, we've got Tish, as I said, 36-year ambassador for Canadian Club, telling us all about the whiskeys that'll be available. It should be a really, really fun night, and hopefully we can sip some fine stuff and watch the Jets win, which should be a big, big game against the Dallas Stars that night, Remo, and should be a heck of a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to being a part of it.
Really cool event, and I think the venue, super cool. I went over there today. John Waldman showed me around some of the jerseys and equipment they have, like bomber footballs from the 50s, like it Andy Bathgate's skates, from way back. Some really cool stuff. So I think the venue, along with the whiskey, along with the Jets game as well, a great combination of what should be an awesome event. Very exclusive event, as you said.
Yes, indeed. Jay Miller's asking if I landed a job at UPS. No, this is actually a beauty, little brown jug hat. I did a pre-tape earlier and then was going into the lock shop, took my headphones off, and realized that I looked like I had just been electrocuted and did not have enough time to do anything special with the lid. So grabbed this one, was wearing it yesterday. Very comfortable. Another example of the great merch from our friends over at Little Brown Jug. So yes, Sandy Sharp, yes, this is at the Hall of Fame. So it'll be at the new Sport for Life Center downtown, especially for people if you do work downtown. If you're maybe listening afterwards, be a great opportunity to kick right over there after work. We'll probably get together, check out the Hall of Fame, in and around 5:30, get things going a little bit after 6, and then get the game on at 7 and have what should be a great night. I mean, the whiskey tasting will probably be finished up during the game, first, second intermission. But again, I'm sure we'll hang around and just watch the rest of the game and hopefully see the Jets get a big win against the Dallas Stars. So if you're thinking about it or you want to go, don't wait on getting tickets because they're going to be gone very, very quickly. Link is in the description of the video. Link is up at the top of the YouTube channel right now. And podcast listeners, if you want to just go to winnipegsportstalk.com, click on whiskey, grab your tickets right now, and we will see you on February the 29th. All right, dude. Let's get to it. Just before because I know we're going to be talking a lot about the Elias Lindholm trade with Billeck and with Ken. Some CFL news right out of the gate. And we'll hear from Chris Streveler in just a minute. But the Hammer, who is as dialed in as anybody on the Canadian Football League, reporting that the Bombers are long shots to sign Brady Oliveira and or Dalton Schoen. And the reports is that Brady's ask right now is around $250,000 a year. I don't blame him. I mean, the running back careers are so short. You got to strike while the iron is hot, and it's never going to be hotter for the young man. But that has to be rattling news for Bomber fans that both of those players could potentially be opponents for the Bombers next year, knowing how incredibly important they've been to Buck Pierce's offense the last few seasons.
Yeah, Jeff writing in his CFL rundown column, I'm less confident this week that Oliveira and or Dalton Schoen, considered two of the league's top potential free agents, will be back in Winnipeg. He's not saying they won't be, but it sounded like it's going to take a lot of work to find common ground. The chance of both returning seems impossible at this point, but stranger things have happened. And as we get closer to free agency, that's when the real cards get played. So that's what Jeff is reporting. And we mentioned this, if miss out on Oliveira, who he said yes, the asking around $250,000. Jeff suggesting Wallet from the Argos would be a much cheaper alternative, coming at $160,000. Who's also, that guy's a hammer, just running up the gun and he was decent in the receiving game as well. But there's so many running backs available: Oliveira, Wallet, Kadeem Carey, Jamal Morrow, Devontae Williams, and now William Stanback. It's like every starting running back in the league available. So I'm not really sure how this is going to work out, but it seems like this is a buyer's market. And, we hope Brady can get, what he's asking for. And to be honest, and Jeff writes this too, he's from Winnipeg, great ambassador for the city. That would be a tough loss, if he were to see him on another team, but there is a salary cap and you can only afford so many guys. So you kind of get it, but that would be disappointing if they can't work it out. And if they can't work out both of them, the two guys who played huge roles here the last couple seasons.
Yeah, and listen, we got into this a little bit yesterday with the why not question of the day as to, if it came down to one or the other, knowing that Brady's Canadian and a local guy and how that helps you out. Who would your priority? Who would you sign? And it was close. I think it ended up being about 58 or 59% in favor of Oliveira, and I totally get it. I do think that if you, I love Ouellette, of those names that you mentioned right off the bat. If the Bombers have to go to a quote-unquote cheaper option, if Brady can get his money somewhere, Ouellette from the Argos is the guy that I thought he was just an absolute load. Was very effective catching the football as well, and just as an absolute battering ram. To me, the loss of Dalton Schoen, I think, would be, I don't want to say devastating to the Bomber offense, because we saw them have to go without him, and there's a plenty of great players. On the team. And of course, Kenny Lawler's here and he is the number one guy. But you could make the argument that over the last 2 years, Dalton Schoen's been the number one guy for Zach Collaros, and the connection that those guys have, especially when Zach's improvising and getting out of the pocket, it was magic almost from day one. So I really hope that there's a way that the Bombers might be able to make something happen with the Dalton Schoen. But to your point about being the buyer's market, as much as we're seeing these big numbers and these big asks, I don't want to say I'll believe it when I see it, but I'm very interested to see how these numbers and what these numbers are once these running backs signed. And the bottom line is, as disappointing as it'll be if Brady's not a Bomber next year, there are some other incredible running backs in the Canadian Football League that we know of. And the other thing is, if we know one thing about the running back position, especially if you're thinking about the Americans, every single year they're cranking out a ton of talented players from the United States. And, this is going to be maybe a year that they lean on Danny Mac and Ted Gavaya a lot more from a scouting perspective to bring some newer, younger, and cheaper players in to maybe follow in the footsteps of guys like Oliveira and Dalton Schoen.
Yeah, and Dalton Schoen was one of those Americans that they were able to find. Led the CFL in yards and touchdowns as a rookie. He was on a rookie contract looking for a big one. Jeff says, Dalton Schoen looking for upwards of $300,000.
Whoa.
And Jeff says he doesn't see the Bombers being able to offer that. They're going to give him a raise from his rookie deal, but he won't be the highest bidder. So he's going to have to decide if he wants to stay with the Bombers or take the money somewhere else. And we saw Kenny Lawler take the money a couple years ago in Edmonton, and wasn't a great situation there. And he ended back here. So they do. I mean, at receiver they have Dembski, they have Kenny Lawler, they have Wolotarski, Rasheed Bailey. He's a free agent. Do they need Dalton Schoen? I mean, you'd like to have him, but it seems like they're kind of locked in terms of your salary structure with Kenny Lawler is he now your top guy? I mean, it was a lot easier when Schoen's making rookie money, but it seems like they have two high-paid receivers. It's kind of frustrating as a fan of the CFL, trying to follow all the salary stuff because it's not public. So shout out to Jeff for trying to give us some clarity here. But you don't have that. There's no cap friendly for the CFL, which makes some of the speculation kind of tough here.
Yeah, we'll really dive into this on Monday when Hammer joins us. Of course, the CFL, like what do we call it? The tampering period, the free agency before free agency starts, is on Sunday. So Jeff will have his ear to the ground, and we can get the latest from him coming up on Monday. And of course, we'll touch on any of the latest news that we may hear tomorrow on the program as well. There is some good news. Chris Streveler is back as a Winnipeg Blue Bomber. And Remo, just before we kind of dive into the hockey, why don't you play the little Instagram vid that Strev dropped for Blue Bomber fans discussing his return to the Peg?
What's up, y'all? Coming home, man. Cannot wait. So excited to just play football. I've got passion for the game. I've got energy for the game. And I'm just excited to get to work. It's been a journey down here these last couple years, bouncing around the NFL, fighting, and I'm excited to come back home up north to Winnipeg. So thank you to all the fans for all the support. Just excited to get back out there with my teammates, guys that I love, that staff, those coaches. Truly feels like home. So couldn't be more excited to get back up there, get to work. Let's go Bombers.
All right, there it is, Chris Streveler. We were all down for a few minutes talking about potentially losing Brady and Dalton Schoen. And then you hear Streveler drop that video, and you're right back in. He is his energy is so amazing. And how about that lid that he was wearing too? That is an absolute beauty. Old school, like starter style hat with the little rim on the top, with the rope on the bottom. Strevy looking good too, and looks like he's enjoying himself somewhere very warm right now.
Yeah, I like that hat as well. So he's back, and I think it's been a challenging couple of years. He said, "I just want to play football," and I'm sure there's been a lot of practicing, a lot of working out. He got into a couple games. We saw him in the preseason with the Jets. It was exciting to see him in the regular season as well, but he's ready to come back, as he said, home. He spoke at a conference call with somebody today, feels very comfortable here in Winnipeg, likes the coaching staff, and Jeff noted yesterday some off-field opportunities for earning additional income through sponsorships or whatever, because personality, We all remember his performance in the Grey Cup, his performance in the Grey Cup
Parade
as well. So I'm excited to see what he's going to bring. I mean, they signed him as backup quarterback, but I imagine he'll be in a lot of plays as well, I'm sure he'll be making some throws as well as running on short yard. So certainly exciting having him back in Winnipeg.
Hey, waiters, with a great point. Cranby better get ready to give up number 17, Reem.
I wonder if there's some kind of transaction made for that. I don't know.
I think the transaction for numbers in the CFL might not be at the level they are in the NHL and some of the other leagues. But and Brown Eye Girl MGD, was Strev in the NFL long enough to earn a pension? Would be great for him. Yes, he was. So he's made some NFL money for a few years. He's got the NFL pension. I think that, and it sort of speaks to what he just had to say in that bit, in that he's a guy that he wants to play. He wanted to come back to Winnipeg. He wants to be a part of this team. He wants to help the Blue Bombers win. And we all know the competitor that Streveler is. He needs to get back out on the field, and he'll get the opportunity to do that, I'm sure, in many different ways. And Buck Pierce can stay up all night scheming as to how they're going to use Chris Streveler, and they might have even a bigger need for Chris Streveler if Brady Oliveira and Dalton Schoen do not re-sign with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And they're both going to free agency. They're both looking for big money, and that could be very, very difficult. We've got Billeck coming up, and we're going to dive into this Elias Lindholm trade and where this leaves the Jets. Ken Wiebe's going to pop on as well. If you just popped in a little late, we got to give a big thanks to our friends at Canadian Club. They are helping put on the Winnipeg Whiskey Festival. And if you're with us on YouTube right now, click that link. There is a very limited number of tickets for a special event we're doing February 29th, 4 weeks today, at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame, the Canadian Whiskey Masterclass. It is going to be a combination whiskey tasting event, along with throwing the Jets-Dallas Stars game up on a massive screen in the Hall of Fame with sound, watching the game. We are really looking forward to it. Shout out to our John at the Hall of Fame, our pal James from Canadian Club for getting us involved in it. So if you're into whiskey and the Jets, this is the night for you. But as I said, it's very limited tickets, only about 30 available. I already had a call last night from somebody that jumped on 4 right away. So get the link. And if you're listening to the podcast, winnipegsportstalk.com, click on whiskey, get the link, and grab those tickets as soon as you can. Got to shout out our friends at Manitoba Battery. February is here. And a little later on this month, Donnie and the gang are opening up a brand new location in the south side of the city on Dover Court. Now, people in the south end will have an even more convenient place to pop in for their battery needs. But one of the great things about Manitoba Battery is shopping local, getting the best price in town on batteries, beating the pants off the big box stores. And of course, the free delivery anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. So expanding the operation. When it is officially open, we'll let you know about the grand opening and some special grand opening sales that Donnie's got done. But in the meantime, for all your battery needs, go to manitobabattery.com or give them a call at 783-8787. And the great staff there will be happy to hook you up. You can also see them at the original location, 1026 Logan Avenue. And hey, guys, I know I had a bit of a hair issue just because it was wet. I had a thing on it, so I've got a hat. But love my new cut from Modern Man Barbershop. And if you do need to get a little work done on the dome, Modern Man is the spot. Well, in fact, there's 8 spots because conveniently located somewhere near you, regardless of where you are in the city of Winnipeg. Modern Man Barbershop has 8 locations, including the new locations on Pembina Highway, where I went, and of course on Plessy Road over on the east side. They've got you covered, fellas, with haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. You can make an appointment and book your look via modernmanbarber.com, and give them a follow on Instagram as well while you're at it, at Modern Man Barbershops. And going to get into a little bit of Jets talk and where the team goes post Elias Lindholm trade. Don't forget The Jets are back in action next week, starting off on the road and coming back home for a huge Saturday night game, hockey night in Canada against Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Tickets are on sale for that game. Limited availabilities left. Get in there. You don't want to miss a chance to see the legend Sidney Crosby before he hangs it up inevitably at some point, although he still is playing at an incredibly high level. Valentine's Day game, if you're looking for something to do with that special someone, against the Sharks on the 14th. And then the big rematch, the much anticipated rematch with the Minnesota Wild on February 20th. WinnipegJets.com/tickets. While you're at it, think about maybe getting into a package or get back into your season tickets that maybe you let expire, and you'll get covered for playoff tickets as well before the general public, and we're all looking forward to that. Is all there for you at WinnipegJets.com, or give the True North office a call. They'd love to help you get back on board with the home team. All right, let's get Billeck in here. Scott Billeck joins us from the Winnipeg Sun. Scotty, what's up? How have you been enjoying a few days away with the Jets on the break?
It's nice just to not have to go anywhere, Huss. I think that's the biggest thing. I just don't have to go downtown, drive home twice a day. I'm not complaining. It's nice to not have to leave the house for a few days. So I'm good with it. Also, are we going to talk about the biggest news in sports today, Huss? Or are we just not going to talk about Formula One?
Formula One, I'll be honest, I have no clue. Why? Did something happen? Have they announced a Winnipeg race?
They have not. They have not. Too many potholes. But no, Lewis Hamilton's going to Ferrari next season. Not this coming year, but the year after, which is huge. I mean, this is the guy who's got 7 world titles, matched Michael Schumacher's record, could potentially break Michael Schumacher's record in the Scarlet Red Ferrari. That's a big deal. Anyways, we can go back to...
Who was the guy that won every single race last year?
Max Verstappen. He won every single race but one.
Yeah, and he's on what team?
Red Bull.
Red Bull, okay. So
yeah.
Does that really matter as long as Max wins every race for Red Bull where anybody else goes? Yeah,
because, I mean, eventually everybody catches up, right? I mean, Mercedes was so good for so long, and eventually Red Bull caught up to them. Ferrari was the second best car last year, in my opinion. The only other team to win a race last year, the only other team to kind of really push. I mean, McLaren did a little bit, but, I mean, for me, I mean, whatever. We don't have to spend a lot of time talking about this because I know nobody cares.
What's wild is that he's already signed with another team for the year. Like that,
this happens often.
That would be like a guy with 1 year left on his contract.
Yeah,
signing
saying where
for
he's
another
going.
team. No, don't worry, I'll be here for one more year, but next year I'm on those guys. A very, very unique setup in Formula One and some of the international, some of those sports. Focusing on player movement here in the National Hockey League, what was your reaction when you heard about the big move by the Vancouver Canucks last night to get Elias Lindholm, as well as the price that was paid, as to what that says about Lindholm, the Canucks, and what the market is going forward?
Well, first of all, welcome to the trade deadline, Huss, because, I mean, I think yesterday was the unofficial start of it, right? Or maybe the official start, let's say. Now, people always ask you, why are you writing trade deadline stories 6 weeks before the deadline? Well, yesterday was just over 4 weeks till the deadline.
Number one is that people want to read them. Thank God Connor put out his video yesterday about the top 5 trade targets because 6,000 people watched that. And by the evening, it was down to 4.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the thing, right? This is part of the deal with the trade deadline is that it's almost like Boxing Day that's turned into Boxing Week, or Black Friday that's turned into Black Friday week and month and whatever, right? These things are what they are, and it's turned into such an arms race, Huss, that when you have a player like Elias Lindholm, who, I mean, I understand he's had a tough season in Calgary. I think there's a lot of Calgary Flames outside of Jacob Markstrom that have had a tough year there. Just the way that team has gone. But Elias Lindholm, and if you just want to talk about how he would have fit into the Winnipeg Jets, and we know the Jets were in on him a little bit, here's a top-line center that would have fit seamlessly, in my opinion, into Rick Bowness's system. He's a two-way forward, great at face-offs, great on the power play, great on the penalty kill. This is a guy who kind of fits all he fits the bill for what the Jets wanted. He obviously fit the bill for what the Vancouver Canucks wanted. I think Boston wanted him, and Colorado wanted him. Vegas potentially, with Jack Eichel being out, probably was sniffing around, as they often do. Vegas. Here's a player who, it's an expensive deal. I mean, Remis just had it up on the screen there. You're giving away a 40-goal scorer, 39 last year. Nears makes no difference. You're giving up 2 prospects. You're giving up a first rounder and a conditional 4th. Like that's a steep price, right? But at the same time, I mean, you're trying to win. I think in Vancouver's case, at least, they're trying to ensure that Elias Paterson, another Swede, another Elias, is going to sign there long term, right? I mean, I think the thing with this is it shows the intentions of the Vancouver Canucks that they're trying to win, that they're trying to go for a Stanley Cup. I mean, I think this trade also, it makes their team obviously better this season. I don't know if they sign Elias Lindholm long term. I don't know if they have the cap space to do that or meet what Lindholm's demands might be. But I think this sends a pretty good message to Elias Pettersson as well, which I think is who they really want to sign long term. So potentially he's also a guy that replaces Elias Pettersson if they can't do it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a big trade. He was the biggest name on the board. He was very rare. Can you trade for a top line center in this league? And they just went and got him. And that's a big deal for the Vancouver Canucks. It's going to help their cause in that Pacific Division, which is sort of wide open, in my opinion. I mean, and you're going to have to potentially face a ridiculously hot running Edmonton Oilers team, potentially at some point. And then you're going to have to probably face whoever comes out of the Central Division to get to the Stanley Cup final. So, yeah, I mean, this is a big move from a lot of teams, including guys like Colorado or Boston that would have wanted a player like this. It shakes up everything because I think the drop-off is a little – it's not – I wouldn't say steep, but the drop-off to an Adam Henrique or even a Sean Monahan is sizable here. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams looking to try and maybe get a little more creative to fix their center problems.
Well, I'm with you as well. I can't believe Kuzmenko scored 39 goals last year.
Yeah. Especially how he's played this year.
Well, exactly. That had completely, I had to go back and double check that. Oh my God, he did have a monster season last year. And he's making, I think, 5.5. And part of it obviously would have been salary coming back. But when you dive into the players, like the package that came back, you've got a guy that obviously can score. I mean, you get him, and who knows, maybe this will be big for Calgary, and then they get a guy that can actually be a trigger man with Jonathan Huberdeau. We know how brutally that marriage has started on his $10.5 million deal. But when you look at the package, so you got Kuzmenko, who is a legit player that is coming off a massive year, although hasn't had a strong one himself, has sort of found himself on the outside looking in at times with the Vancouver Canucks. A first-round pick that projects to be a late first-rounder, a conditional 4th, and a couple of prospects. The prospect that I think is most interesting is this Hunter Brustowicz, who is a right shot defenseman. He was picked in the 3rd round. He's, I believe, 3rd in OHL scoring, not of defensemen, of players right now. So, I mean, a prospect that's making some big moves at all. And when I sort of look at, so let's look at the price that Vancouver paid. What prospect, you know what the picks are? You're talking about legit prospects. And then a player off the roster, the one thing that I've heard, and there's been some insane, as there always is, and it's fun, but you see Twitter, you see people talking about guys that the Jets should go and get. If this is the cost, I heard someone talking about Joel Eriksson Ek, and I personally think there's about as much of a chance as Edmonton trading McDavid as Minnesota trading Ek, especially in the Division II Winnipeg, considering that he's signed for, I think, 5 more years at less than $6 million, number 1 center, incredible 200-foot player.
Yeah.
But we also think about, we hear people kicking around, and Connor mentioned Casey Middlestad, which is great in theory. But, Like, you're not getting a guy like that or anyone just for your first round pick and, some change.
Yeah.
I mean, like, unless you're willing to move off of the top prospects that the Winnipeg Jets have, or would the Winnipeg Jets be able to get Casey Middlestat without trading Cole Perfetti?
Probably.
Like, Middlestat's 8th overall, Perfetti's 10th overall. You look at their numbers, like we always overvalue our own players and think that other teams are just going to be trading guys for 50 cents on the dollar, especially Buffalo's situation right now. Like they're not just giving up on a player like that right now without getting a big return. And it's not just all futures down the road. Like, I'm really interested into what might move from the Winnipeg Jet, or what the Jets would have to move off their roster right now if they wanted to get a player like that. And to some fans who are very high on particular players, there would be some major sticker shock. And I think last night's deal is a perfect example of that.
It certainly is, and I think I've seen some trades. Oh, it's Middlestat for a first, maybe Villy or somebody like that, and Mason Appleton. I'm like, guys, Mason Appleton. I like Mason Appleton. He's a good, hardworking player. He doesn't move the needle in a Casey Middlestat trade. Let's just go with that, right? And I think you're right. I mean, I think Cole Perfetti might be there, and if it's not Cole Perfetti, it's going to be Colby Barlow, or it's going to be Rutger McGroarty, or it's going to be Elias Salmonson, or Brad Lambert. Those you're going to have to give up 2 top-notch prospects. For Casey Middlestat, who, I am writing about him today because he's a little bit of an off-the-board kind of player, right? I mean, he's a guy who has some term on him. I think he's only 25, former 8th overall, as you said, and is kind of a bit of a late bloomer. He didn't live up to the 8th overall kind of billing early on. Sabres aren't a great team back then either. So, how much does that played into it? Does he get better playing with better players? He's 6'1", I believe. I think he's 185 pounds. So he's not entirely undersized, but I mean, he's also not 6'3", 220 like Pierre-Luc Dubois would have been. I just wondered, does he fit? And he's a bit of a risk. And so are you going to move off of somebody like Cole Perfetti? And I don't think so. I think that's a non-starter.
I don't either. I'm not
Cole
suggesting
Perfetti,
that
right?
they're going to, but I'm just that is the sort of player that a team is going to be looking for if you're getting a former 8th pick that's at 25 years old, just getting into his prime.
Yeah, you're going to have to sweeten the pot with something, right? I mean, Winnipeg's first round pick is basically just as good as Winnipeg's, probably some, maybe there's, I don't know. I don't think it's a great pick, right?
He's leading Buffalo in scoring, by the way, right now. He's got 12 goals and 30 assists, 42 points in 49 games.
I mean, if you're Buffalo, I mean, I don't know where the Buffalo Sabres see themselves right now, right? This is the kind of the problem that they have, is that I think they expected a lot more this year and they haven't really gotten it, right? And that's part of the problem. So, but I mean, you could probably package Winnipeg's first, Montreal's second in there, because they're basically going to be potentially the same sort of range of picks in that, late 20s, early 30s, maybe mid 30s, right, for both of those picks. But even then, what does that do for Buffalo, right? That's the problem. If the Buffalo Sabres think they're kind of moving on up, losing Middlestat for some prospects and some picks, just, I don't know if that fixes their team, right? And they have some good defensemen there, obviously, with Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin. So do they need a Villy, right? Or is it somebody that they're looking at? Do they want a Brad Lambert? Do they want a McGroarty? Do they want to? And then the other thing is, do the Jets want to move off those guys? Because I think here's the problem. I understand that people don't like the untouchable comment and that sort of thing. But you have to realize, too, that there's cap implications here, too. And the Jets are kind of, and we were talking about this even back in the summer, the Jets could move into this kind of season here where they're going to have the right mix of guys on ELCs that could be impact players on the roster.
Yes.
And then guys that are making the top money. So this is where I'm just kind of struggling with what the Jets do at this deadline, because I think there is a road here to go all in, right? Or to kind of push all the chips into the middle here, because this team has earned it, right? We'll see if that's still the case in a month. But I mean, given the way this team has played this year, in my opinion, it's way better than last year, even if the numbers and where they are in the standings are sort of the same. Just that goals against number being the top in the league and in terms of the fewest goals allowed shows me that this team is a lot better. Plus, you have Connor Hellebuyck playing at a ridiculous rate on top of that. So, like, this is a team that is very difficult to beat when they're scoring goals, obviously, and when they're healthy. And so there is this option here for the Jets to kind of look, and I just wonder where they're looking now. What do you look for? Is it Mittelstadt? And maybe it's not Mittelstadt. Like, I like the idea of Mittelstadt, but if you're looking off the board, what about a Brock Nelson? What about a Nick Schmaltz? What about a Claude Giroux, right? And I don't even know what the players are. The thing with those guys is that, especially with like maybe a Nelson and a Giroux, you're probably going to need if the Jets are looking to add more than just a second line center, which I think they want a depth defenseman as well, maybe even a depth winger. You need some salary cap retention here on those two guys because they're making $6 million or more, and so it's an interesting spot for the Jets to be in, right? I mean, the nice thing about Elias Lindholm was he was sub $5 million on his AAV, and so the Jets could made that work and possibly still maybe moved a Logan Stanley out, made some money work to get somebody else in there, and now, it makes things interesting because you could look at Monahan, you could look at an Adam Henrique. I don't know. I mean, it depends where this. I think we know that Vlad Mestikov has been very good for this team, but he's not. But it really kind of harkens back a little bit to the Brian Little argument, right? Like, Brian Little was a great second line center, but this team kept looking for just a different secondary layer back in the late 2010s there when they go out Stastny and then they tried to go with Kevin Hayes and all that. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do now. If they were in on Lindholm, obviously they weren't willing to pay the price. And I would love to know what that price was because I think it probably included some names that Jets fans would have looked at and have been like, if it didn't go well for the Jets in the playoffs or whatever, you're like, okay, well, now we're probably not going to re-sign Lindholm long-term. And, you're out possibly 2 top prospects, maybe a roster player and a first-round pick. That's a tough pill to swallow, but this is part of the risk of this time of the year too, Huss, right? Like, only one team's going to lift the Stanley Cup this year, and there's going to be a good 10, 12, maybe more teams that are looking to make big swings to try and be able to do that. And so you only look smart if you win. And sometimes you look pretty bad if you don't. So it's going to be an interesting time.
I am of the opinion, and this is quite different than in previous years.
Yeah,
that rental players make the most sense for the Winnipeg Jets.
Sure.
Listen, what makes the most sense is to get your guy that you think puts you over the top and you can win with. But all things being equal, if you can get a player that comes in, potentially an older player, but that you're not tied to beyond this season. Like, if I'm Cheveldayoff and I look at the way this roster looks next year, knowing that every forward on the team is signed for next year, with the exception of Perfetti, who's an RFA, who will get a deal, whether it's a bridge deal or a long-term deal, that will remain to be seen.
Yeah.
But then, in addition, having some young players that, could come in and make a difference and be regulars on ELCs, like grabbing a guy at a big number with a lot of term, unless it's a player that you just get rid of other guys do it because he's that much better, is sort of the way to go. And listen, I have never been a huge Monahan fan. I shouldn't say that. I thought he was really good all along, but I also thought he was washed and he was done. And we all remember how he ended up in Montreal. Calgary said, "Here's our first-round pick. Take this guy." Yeah. So I have sort of laughed, and I've talked about it on the show, the thought of Monahan getting the Habs another first-round pick, and that's certainly what they're floating out as the ask. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what, I do have questions as to whether he has the wheels to play like with a guy like Nikolai Ehlers. And this player that they're coming in, you are going to want him to gel and to be able to play in that top 6 and kind of reset. And I mean, if Vladimir Mestikov is your 4th line center, can bounce around the lineup when guys are hurt, I think you're in good shape. Yeah. We know how important faceoffs are to Rick Bowness, and we know how poor the Jets have been generally there. That's a big plus for Monahan. Monahan only making 1.9 this year. That's a that's a contract that you could take on that without much difficulty.
Yep.
And then the question is, I mean, he is having a pretty good season. Now, would he play in the same sort of scenarios and get the ice time and the opportunity that he is in Montreal? Maybe not. But he still is having a big bounce back season right now. And even last year, in the limited time that he played with Montreal, he was pretty productive right now. He's got 35 points in 49 games. He scored 13 times.
Yep.
Like, I would entertain bringing him in. And I saw Jay Fresh saying yesterday, and I sort of agree. Like, I'm dubious that they will get a first-round pick for Monahan. But with Lindholm going off the board at this point, and if a rental for some teams, it makes a lot more sense. And I think the Jets are in that category. To me, I think the likelihood of them going that route maybe increased a little bit. And listen, could you give them their second-round pick for it, which is basically a laced first-rounder? I mean, that projects to be in and around 40th overall. And maybe you add in a third or a fourth-rounder or something like that. Maybe that gets it done. But to me, Monahan, as opposed to all those other players, also has the salary that is so much easier to fit in. It gives you the opportunity to maybe do some other things, whether it be the blue line or elsewhere in your forward group if he came in here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I was going to say the Montreal second round pick might be it. And then, I don't know, maybe do you give him Logan Stanley, whatever, right? I mean, you could look at it that way and be like, okay, well, you could probably make it work. I wouldn't say I'm bullish on Sean Monahan, but I mean, I think here's a guy who knows that he's fighting for a contract, right? I think he knows that, if he plays well and continues to do well, somebody's going to take a chance on him in the summer and sign him to a decent deal. So yeah, I mean, again, if we look at the trade deadline as always being a risk, I mean, is the risk any bigger? Like, I think you would say that Elias Lindholm, based on the price that was paid, is high risk, potentially high reward. I think Sean Monahan, given the price that you could potentially pay, could be low risk and to medium to high reward if he continues to play the way that he's playing, right? And so, can he move into a second line role, playing with Ehlers and Perfetti, and make that work? That sounds like a nice spine for the Jets. If you said Nemestikov moves down to the fourth line, you have Scheifele, Monahan, then you have Adam Lowry and Nemestikov. I mean, that's a pretty good spine for a team going into the playoffs. It's not as sexy, let's say, as Scheifele, Lindholm, Lowry, right? But at the same time, the cost of acquisition is going to be a lot lower. The salary cap implication means it's a lot lower, which means you can start looking elsewhere, right? You can try and look for maybe a Chris Tanev or something like that to round out your defense. So yeah, I mean, I think that it is it. But I mean, what are you looking for at the end of the day, right? I mean, are you looking for the best player? Are you looking for the best fit? Are you looking for, probably a combination of all of those, right? Cap, all that, face-offs, power play, like what else can they do for you? So yeah, it's a good question, Hassan, and maybe that is it, right? I mean, the thing with Adam Henrique is he's a little bit older, obviously. Monahan's a little younger. I just think that Monahan's got a bit more to prove here, and if it all goes well for him, it could benefit both him and the Jets long term.
Yeah, you know what I mean. We'll ask Ken about this too. I mean, Henrique's intriguing to me. Henrique makes $4 million or $3. Yep. I think he's at 5.6 or something like that, 5.7 as opposed to the 1.9 of Monahan. Yeah. So I mean that prevents you probably from doing other things. I will say this, Henrique, if he ended up on a team, like let's just say it happens and he comes to the Winnipeg Jets, this is a guy that has been productive through his career, can certainly play in that hole at center. And I mean, he went to the Cup final as a rookie, played 24-25 games. He's played 4 playoff games since then. Like, that would be a guy that would be incredibly hungry, I think, to come in and make a difference. And it certainly would be a great opportunity for a guy going into free agency. But again...
Well, who does he remind you of, Haas? Like if you looked at Adam Henrique and looked at another player that the Jets got at the deadline at one point, who does he remind you of? Like to me, he reminds me of Paul Stastny. Like here's a wily vet who is has been a good centerman in his career, who maybe has lost half a step, but is just smart enough that doesn't really affect him that much, right? I mean, and that's the thing with Adam Henrique. He's a good player. He's good in the faceoffs. He can play both sides of the special teams ledger. Like, I mean, here's a guy who might fit the bill, but you're right. Like it's prohibitive. Like his salary cap is a little prohibitive, right? I mean, the thing with Anaheim though, for the last bit of this year, maybe you can get some salary retention, right? I mean, I assume you can bake that into
but that
it, right?
costs. I mean, that costs.
Of course, it costs
assets.
something. It always costs something.
That's the big thing. Well, listen, we'll look forward to reading your F1 in-depth article tomorrow. Or no, I mean Jetsa article tomorrow on the program.
If only us.
Thanks for doing this, dude. All right,
anytime. And everybody's going to feel bad with Kenny coming in here because I can see it. And I just like my backdrop does not look like Ken Weave's backdrop.
The good thing is, listen, I know you haven't left the house in 4 days, kicking it back to 2021, but it's actually gorgeous outside. So with this,
it is nice.
This isn't as much a kick in the junk as it normally would be when we bring Ken in. Anyways, Billeck, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, have a good one.
Of course, we talked quite a bit of Bombers in the Schoen Oliveira situations, and great to see the little greeting for Bomber fans from Chris Streveler earlier on. Cannot wait to see Strev do his thing once again at Princess Auto Stadium. Of course, the home of the Blue Bombers has been renamed for a proud Manitoba company doing so much for our sports teams and Winnipeg in general in Princess Auto. And, Princess Auto is a great sponsor of ours, and of course the place where you'll find the best and most unique assortment of tools around everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is over at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them at Panet Road or Portage Avenue West locations, and always you can shop online 24/7 365 at princessauto.com. We're already counting down the days to get up to that Princess Auto tailgate zone before the first Winnipeg Blue Bomber action of the year. But first, we got to get to CFL free agency again. All our Bomber reports on WST. Brought to you by Princess Auto. Shout out to our friends at Wallace & Wallace, the fencing and overhead door specialists in Winnipeg since 1946. Finishing up, 8 decades here in Winnipeg. Listen, the fencing, you've seen their fences and trucks all over the city. But you might not know that they are the leaders in overhead garage doors. And right now, while it's actually quite pleasant outside, the winter and the deep freeze puts the most stress on your garage door. The right time to prevent downtime is right now. Give Wallace & Wallace a call to book your inspection and maintenance visit today. For residential and commercial overhead door sales and service, there's only one name or two you need to know, and that is Wallace & Wallace. And thinking about menswear and clothing, for some of us, is a bit of a drag, but I can tell you, if you're looking in the closet and you need to up your menswear game, if you've got some big events coming up in 2024, the best place to go is down at F Apparel. The great staff at F will measure you up and get these custom clothes made to fit and look great for all of your needs. They've got custom suits starting at $400. We got Connor heading down there for a fitting on Friday. Not to mention chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. Don't forget, if you are getting married this year or in a wedding party, make sure to talk to the fellas at F at a 15% discount for the entire wedding party when you get your suits at F Apparel. Pop by and see them at 190 Smith Street downtown, or make an appointment to come in for a fitting and find out more information on everything they've got going at F online at ephapparel.com. All right, certainly not wearing a suit right now. Taking in a little bit of sun, rocking the wake-up shirt, joining us from, I believe, beautiful Mexico. It's none other than Ken Wiebe. Look at this backdrop of the many that you have dropped on us before. This is right up there with the best one. How's that? How are your travels?
Andrew, great to be with you. In honor of Chris Streveler, I would have considered the first shirtless appearance on the Winnipeg Sports Talk, but I didn't pack the fur coat. So if I had the fur coat, we might have I got to lose a few pounds, but I was
if you want to go
considering
tarps off at some point, the ladies in the chat will love it.
I know it's been a great week. Yeah, Huss. The travels have been great here in beautiful Playa del Carmen here for a few more days. Snuck out a little bit before the All-Star break, actually, so it was nice of Mike McIntyre to hold down the fort. Happy to report. I know you usually get this at the end of the show, but had a great visit with Rick Bowness. Have a big feature coming up in the Saturday edition of the Winnipeg Free Press. Little kind of just a nice feature on Bowness with what he went through this year. Going into the All-Star game for the first time. So pumped about that dropping. Wrote that. Huss, it's always great when you can write a 1,900-word feature on the deck when it's still 20-something degrees at night here, and you hear the ocean in the background. So it was a nice place. The out of office email here this week has been a good one here for sure.
You know what?
A lot happening as it turns out.
Yeah, I just quickly I have to ask you about how. How K&R went. I mean, I am as loyal a K&R viewer and listener as they come, but because of there was the Leaf game on Saturday night, I went out afterwards and I took my phone off and I had to come back, and then I got into the PVR Royal Rumble, which then headed into Sunday, which was all NFL. How did the K&R go? Because you were there, and wasn't Rennie doing a game in Ottawa?
Yeah, we had a lot happening here, Huss, for sure. I do.
Did
have
you
to
guys
say,
pull it off?
I was diligently watching though. The first part of the first period we did watch in the restaurant, but the beauty of technology is we got the game worked out on the television in the hotel room, so it was a not a full live viewing experience, but certainly I've had to kind of battle through tougher situations, Huss. So the CTO was happy to he was very much of use this weekend for sure. I'll have to be taking care of Remo here a little bit later on, but it was great. I mean, Sean did a great job hosting, considering he was reliant mostly on the highlights, but we had a good time with it for sure. I didn't have to course correct him. There were no goalie blades that fell off during a goal that he was ripping the goalie for. So no, it was great. And yeah, I mean, it's sometimes you just got to get by, Huss, right? That's the beauty of what we do. So Jeff Hamilton was kind enough to be with us, and
this might be a new plan for Rennie. Rennie's takes might be better if he can't see the game. You never know. Just. Love Rennie.
As we kid, exactly.
Well, for sure. No, listen, let's get to it. I mean, what was your reaction to the Lindholm trade?
Sure.
In particular, the cost. First of all, Vancouver doing it when they did.
Yep.
And what was the reaction from people that you've talked to about the price that was paid for Lindholm, who, by most accounts, was the top rental center available, at least right now, on most people's trade boards?
Yeah, twofold, Huss. Obviously, we know that Jim Rutherford is, quite frankly, he is the king of the preemptive strike. I think it's fairly fair to say. I think that he's often gone and tried to jump the queue when it comes to picking up a rental type of situation kind of player. Patrick Alvin, obviously the GM, he's obviously the one pulling the trigger, but Jim is obviously involved in terms of the processes and everything else. I think Craig Conroy. I don't know a ton about the prospects, Huss, so I'm not going to come on here. I'm going to say, do your due diligence, but go to the prospects, guys, for information on the prospects. I think that's probably, I'm not out here to say, who's going to do what, but obviously the defenseman that the Flames are getting is a, high profile kind of guy from the U.S. National Development Program who, one of the pieces I read, I think from some Scott Wheeler, made it pretty clear that he is a high risk, high reward type of player. But I mean, for them, the centerpiece is easy to identify. I mean, Craig Conroy was, ripped in some circles for his summer trade of Tyler Toffoli. But if we're checking the receipts on February 1st, I would say that Igor Sharangovich has more than acquitted himself very well. I would imagine that the Flames pro scouting staff has made it clear that they expect Kuzmenko to be more like the player they saw last year than the one that's been, in the doghouse and on the fourth line and on the second power play this year for the Canucks. I mean, it is important to realize that Kuzmenko, he scored a ton of goals last year, I think 39 by the story that I just read, but he shot 27%, Huss. I mean, those are not sustainable numbers even if you have one of the best shots in the NHL. Having said all that, there will be top 6 minutes available to Kuzmenko, and he's a guy that can finish. So, I mean, and naturally the Flames don't score easily, as we know from Lindholm's numbers himself. So it's a low risk, maneuver for the Flames. They have an opportunity to hit a couple of, lottery balls there. I would think that the first round pick, I mean, if you're the Canucks, that pick probably ends up being between 26 and 32. So probably going to be worth it. But at the same time, I mean, for Craig Conroy, in the article that I read of his on him, checks all the boxes for them. So, I mean, naturally, the Jets fans are wondering, well, could the Jets not have had a package that would have been similar? The problem with that, I mean, who would you compare Kuzmenko to on the Jets roster? I mean,
my first question for you.
I wouldn't say Perfetti, but if you're Craig Conroy, do you not think that's probably what type of player you're asking for in this deal? I mean, what other? I know
absolutely.
Some fans are saying, "Oh, well, that should have just been Mason Appleton and Ville Heinola and whatever else." I'm like, no, we're not looking at apples and oranges. We're looking at apples and oranges here. If that's what you think the offers are, and so I think I'm not. I would imagine. Craig Conroy said 5 teams were interested. I'd be shocked if the Jets hadn't made a competitive offer. But without dipping high into the prospect pool, I don't see a simple solution to the Jets finding a way to match what the Canucks gave. And some people are saying, "Oh, with the money, you should have just thrown Nate Schmidt's contract in there." Well, again, it's not apples to apples here when it comes to the assets that the Flames would have been looking for. And that's not a knock on Nate Schmidt, but like Kuzmenko scored 39 goals last year. Like Mark Scheifele had 42. So I'm not saying the Flames were asking for Scheifele, but they certainly weren't asking for a third pairing defenseman that's making almost $6 million. Like that's not what it would have taken to get the deal done. So it'll be interesting to see where the Jets pivot. I think this is a smart move for both sides. Craig Conroy definitely is able to build a prospect pool. He's got an NHL ready player jumping right in. And he, quite simply, it's very simple, Huss. Elias Lindholm, from what I've been talking to with people, is looking for north of what Mark Scheifele made in the market. And that was only with one team bidding. So it's higher than 8.5, and it's maybe higher than 9. So if he gets that, we'll see. And I know that his numbers have dipped this year. The Flames don't score easily. But Lindholm 2 years ago, Huss, was on the most productive line in the NHL, right? His two wingers
year, and he's going to have a great opportunity. This is great for him because I think he's going to go to a team that, scores a lot. That'll give him an opportunity to sort of show what he can do and maybe get that big deal.
Just one quickly thing, just last to wrap up with Lindholm. So Elias Pettersson is a very strong defensive player, but by bringing in Lindholm, at least on the home games, you are taking away all of the hard matchups. Lindholm is a incredibly conscientious two-way player, probably still one of the better defensive centers in hockey. So this is a twofold move. Like Lindholm's probably going to give them more offense than he gave to Calgary this year, but he's also going to take a humongous amount of pressure off of Pettersson and company when it comes to the checking aspect. And don't kid yourself. If you want to win 3 or 4 rounds, you need a player like Lindholm that can sort of alleviate some of that stress on the best offensive player or players on the team, if you want to include JT Miller in that conversation.
Well, and again, we're talking about winning in the playoffs. That defensive aspect is so
huge.
important. I mean, Stonewall Dave said Lindholm was very much the 3rd most important piece on the best line in the NHL that season.
Oh, I don't agree.
Neither do I. And do not underestimate what he does in both ends. And that's a big part of winning. And that's a big part of the reason why he was attractive. As far as where the Jets go, I'm sort of surprised I hear so many people talking about Casey Middlestat. Not that he's not an intriguing prospect, but sure. I think it's our job, Ken, to sort of deal in reality here.
Yep.
He is leading the Buffalo Sabres in scoring right now. He was an 8th overall pick in the draft. He's 25 years old. He's still under team control. Like, let's say the Jets were really horny and they thought he'd be the guy that could come in and play second line center. How do they even begin a conversation on Casey Middlestat without Perfetti being a guy that is part of the package to get him here?
Yeah, Huss, great question. And Middlestat is super interesting, Huss, because prior to the season, I mean, with all due respect to Middlestat, who came out of the U.S. National Development Program, it spoken about the next Patrick Kane, right? I mean, he was said, if he didn't break some of the numbers, he certainly was in that realm of production. But he had been an underachieving player, Huss, at the NHL level until this year, essentially. So I'm not saying that would be a
Buffalo
deterrent.
had many.
No, for sure. And again, if you're Kevin Adams, Huss, why in the world would you consider moving a player who essentially, I'm not saying he's definitely not supplanted Tage Thompson, but because Thompson had a bunch of injuries. But if you're Kevin Adams, why in the world are you considering not having Tage Thompson and Casey Middlestat as your own top two centers? And it's not like the Sabres need to go and trade for defensemen. Checks notes. Oh, they have Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. Oh, why would you move Middlestat if you're Kevin Adams? So I don't. The rumor mill. Sometimes you have to pay careful attention to the names that end up on the rumor mill because sometimes they're just not dealing in reality. And secondly, Huss, I mean, in terms of the style of player the Jets are looking for, so if we're looking at Casey Middlestat as an example, the example is you would be using Casey Middlestat on a line with Cole Perfetti if you didn't have to trade him, and probably Nikolai Ehlers, right? I mean, it's an intriguing line, but I just don't see that. I don't see him as being a player that's available unless you blow the Sabres away with a package that hurts the organization in the long term. And B, I think that what we've been talking about, and you touched on it with Scotty there at the end of the conversation, the Jets are looking for A, experience, B, some guys who have won before, and C, they're probably looking at a little bit more, on a line with Perfetti and Ehlers, you're probably looking at a guy with a little bit more size. And I'm not saying he has to be 6'6" and a bruiser, but I am saying that you're probably looking for a different style of centerman. And just a quick thing about Henrique. I mean, Henrique is intriguing on a lot of levels. I mean, and the difference between Henrique and Stastny as an example, because that's how Scotty kind of compared it. There are some parallels for sure. I would say Henrique's probably a much better skater, and he probably doesn't have the same kind of vision, but he fits that kind of utility role as a number two center because he can play in all situations, like Stastny. Can play on the penalty kill, can play on the power play, can give you top 6 minutes. And we know based on how Rick Bowness uses his line combinations and usage, that line as a third over the boards type of line is going to get some intriguing matchups against third pairing. So I would think that would be a very appealing scenario for the Jets, whether it's, Adam Henrique. And again, I've mentioned Brock Nelson a couple times. I'm not here to say that Lou Lamoriello is shopping Brock Nelson, but for an organization that has a lot of center depth, I mean, Brock Nelson makes sense because he's a really good player. He's from Roseau, Minnesota, or Warroad, Minnesota, and, played at UND. So I think he'd make sense on a lot of levels. But, I mean, the thing is, Huss, and, we've discussed this privately, and so have Sean and I. I mean, the Jets are probably going to be looking at someone who we're not thinking about here. So we're all trying to think of the under-the-radar type of possibility, but that person's not going to end up on a lot of the trade boards, I guess, is probably what I'm saying. But yeah, I mean, I still do think 2C is probably one of the priorities, but I would also say this, Huss. I mean, the fact that Calgary has used the preemptive strike with Elias Lindholm, to me, would make it much more likely the Jets are pushing a few more chips in on the Chris Tanev sweepstakes. Now, having said that, a lot of teams are in that boat because of the salary that Tanev makes and because of the situation and how there's just not a lot of top pairing defensemen available. So I still think that Tanev would be someone that would be of keen interest to the Jets.
How close do you think the ask for Tanev would be to what they just got for Lindholm?
Yeah, I mean, Huss, it's so hard to be. The thing with Tanev is he's
the ask will probably
the ask is super high.
How much can they get for Tanev as it pertains to what just was paid for Lindholm?
This is what I mean. So, Lindholm doesn't have eye-popping offensive numbers, and Tanev has never posted like big offensive numbers because he's more in the shutdown defenseman type of role. But the value of a player that can immediately jump in, on either a top pairing with Josh Morrissey or on the second pairing with Brendan Dillon, and then you move Neil Pionk onto the third pairing with Dylan Samberg, like the value of that would be very similar to me in terms of what he can give to the team. Now, what it costs to get him, it's hard to determine. I would say that the pool of teams in on Tanev might even be higher. If Craig Conroy said he had 5 serious offers from teams for Lindholm, I have to think at least 5 teams.
I think you're right.
And probably closer to 10 would be in on Tanev. But again, I mean, will there be some retention? I don't know. Tanev, I mean, we know that it's a natural fit. He played here with the Manitoba Moose. So we know he would know about the Jets organization because his brother played there. And this is a guy that wants to win, Huss. I mean, again, Vancouver's saying that they're not out on necessarily on Tanev, but I would say it's become a lot harder for the Canucks to be in on Chris Tanev than it would be for a team that, hasn't added a second line center as of yet. But I mean, now we always look at this, Huss. First big domino has fallen. Does that mean 5 teams try to make preemptive strikes, or does that mean those 5 teams are now patient for one more month when they're trying to accumulate a little bit more cap space if they're not drawing into LTIR, which a lot of teams already are? So it's always interesting to see, once the first domino drops, what does that mean for the rest of the market? And for the Jets, it can't just be about an arms race. But what we've seen of late, Huss, is that other teams, and we know this from what happened last year, other teams are getting better in the second half. So even if you love the team that you've composed, you still are going to want to upgrade probably on defense and probably at second line center if a team like the Jets wants to try and win 4 rounds in 16 games.
Yeah. And you just speaking to the preemptive strike for a minute, Dusty and I were talking about it in the lock shop earlier today.
Yep.
And he made a great point in that, Vancouver sees what Edmonton's doing right now. In Vancouver's case, if they can win, let the Oilers and Vegas go at it in the first round. For Winnipeg, if the Jets can win the Central and let Colorado and Dallas beat the hell out of each other in the first round and have home ice in that next series, if you're able to get past, with all due respect, an opponent that will not be of the quality of a team in the top 3 of either of those the divisions, is significant. And I get why Vancouver died, and I applaud them for doing it, because I think it really does give them a much better chance of holding on to what they've built right now. And I think that helps them in a big way come playoff time.
Yeah, no doubt. And for sure. I mean, we know this because of what happened on Saturday. Yes, of course, Jets were still first in the Central on points percentage, but even this little miniature 3-game losing streak that included 1 overtime point, the Jets went from first in the Central to third, like in a snap of a finger, right? Dallas and Colorado both passed them in points. Now, I understand points percentage is different and games in hand count for what they do, but Huss, you're completely right. And with all due respect to the St. Louis Blues, Nashville Predators, Arizona Coyotes, insert team that goes on a hot run here to finish 7th or 8th in those wildcard spots. It's just not, I'm not going to say it's not anywhere near the level of competition, but the difference between having to have a, knock them down, throw them out, slobber knocker of a matchup in the first round with Dallas or Colorado, it just harkens us back to 2018. I mean, we use this as a reference point because it's the year the Jets went the longest. And having a 5-game matchup in the first round with the Wild were a good hockey team, Huss. They were not in the same level as the Nashville Predators or later on the Vegas Golden Knights. So it's the same concept here for both Vancouver and Winnipeg. And you're absolutely right. That's why you would go for the preemptive strike. Now, Lindholm is interesting because he's been traded before and he's had the transition phase. But if you're going to acquire someone who has spent his entire career somewhere or spent the last, 5 to 8 years somewhere, well, of course you want to give them more time to get acclimatized with the program that you are operating in, especially for a team like the Jets, who we've talked about. You don't want to disrupt the chemistry and all those things. I would say, Huss, that's fine to say, and I understand why GMs like Kevin Cheveldayoff and other people say it. But Huss, we've seen this in other sports, and again, you and I both watch baseball closely. When a team is very good and their general manager doesn't take a swing, we saw this with the Blue Jays. When that happens, you almost have not a mutiny, but you definitely run the risk of, even if you have a great cohesive thing rolling, if you're a good team and you don't take a swing, you run the risk of having a negative effect in that room in terms of players looking around and saying, the guy publicly will say, I believe in this group, that's why I didn't do anything else. But it's a dicey kind of, you're walking a tightrope there, Huss, when it comes to what you're doing and what your actions are based on what your words are. And again, that's not to say that Kevin Cheveldayoff doesn't believe in the group that he has, but I think in his heart of hearts, he would know if he wants to make it through 4 rounds, he needs to upgrade the roster. I'm not saying he has to overhaul the roster by any stretch, but he needs to upgrade the roster in order for that to happen. And he knows that, which is why they're going to make a move or two.
Yeah, listen, exactly. I mean, the question is to how much goes out, what comes in, and what potentially moves off of the roster. Another intriguing guy, an intriguing situation overall is what's happening in Columbus. A disaster season. I guess first I do wonder whether they still trust Jarmo to go and make a bunch of moves at the deadline, like what his future is, and just how active they may or may not be. But speaking of guys off the radar, a guy that we've kind of talked on this show a little bit that I think would have a lot of interest, not just in Winnipeg, but elsewhere, is their captain, Boone Jenner. Now, trading your captain in that way would be big. I mean, he's on a very affordable deal, 3.6. He's signed for 2 more years. He's 30 years old. Like, if Columbus was willing to move off a player like that, Ken, considering everything we had and the salary and the term, like how pricey would that be for a team like Winnipeg in your mind?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I do see a lot of fit from Boone Jenner. I mean, on a championship team, he's probably more likely to be in the Adam Lowry role as a third line center. But at the same time, he does have some offensive gifts. I mean, he's a hard-nosed kind of player, plays a physical game, all of those things. I think that in the right situation, he could play on the second line. I mean, especially because we know Lowry will get a lot of the hard matchups. I don't know what the asking price is. It's a great question. I mean, Boone Jenner's not a huge point producer, but he's a productive guy.
Had 26 last year.
No, I know.
Games.
It just, I mean, his opportunity with Columbus would be different than his opportunity here. But hey, anytime a team can add a 26 goal guy, yeah, you're all for it. But I mean, I just don't know what kind of, are they going scorched earth now? I mean, Columbus has been in a weird spot, us, because since those UFA departures, they've kind of been in the middle, not in the middle in terms of standings, but they have the combination of young players and kind of veterans. Like, the roster isn't kind of lining up the way it needs to, which is why maybe moving Jenner makes sense for them, because they're still kind of stuck in this rut here. Again, and there's a lot of intrigue around Columbus. And again, us, I mean, I know you've probably been talking about it all week, but I mean, first and foremost, people around these parts, and, I was fortunate enough to get to know Patrick a little bit on a personal level, just in terms of our professional dealings at the arena. You wish nothing but the best for him, first and foremost, in terms of getting the help that he needs, getting healthy, and then resuming his career when he can. But that, that's nothing to do with Jenner, but I just needed to add that because I know it's probably has been a hard time. That's not an easy decision for people to make, and I applaud him for having the courage to go into the NHL PA program and hope that he gets the help that he needs. In terms of the asking price, I don't know. I mean, I think he would be really good fit on a lot of levels. I haven't had a lot of personal interaction with Boone Jenner, but the limited amount that I've had, I've heard nothing but good things about him. And like you said, when you have that level of term attached at such a reasonable salary, he will have appeal to all contenders, knowing. Now, again, I don't know what the timeline is with his injuries and all that, but I would think that he would be someone who would be of great interest to the Jets and others for sure. In terms of what Jarmo would be able to extract for that kind of an asset, it's interesting, and we'll be tossing it around. But I don't know how deep into the shelves you're picking if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, but you probably attach a high draft pick. I don't know the difference for me, Huss, between 26 and 32 for a first rounder versus maybe I would think that maybe that Montreal second rounder would be one of the appealing assets. And I also think that Columbus is probably looking for kind of more like close to NHL marinated prospects that they want to have kind of growing up with the Adam Fantillis, who unfortunately for him is going to be on the shelf for a while here. But the core pieces are trying to build around like Cole Sillinger and Adam Fantilli and those guys. So I mean, the Jets will have some of those guys in terms of an appeal, but I'm not 100% sure what is on Jarmo or John Davidson's shopping list either.
Yeah, I mean, we hear these.
But I like where you're going there. I like where you're going with that.
Well, I mean, he would be a guy, but I mean, when I look at what the Jets have right now and what's in the cupboard, I mean, you're probably needing to throw that first round pick out. You're maybe getting a prospect out, but this is the guy that's the captain of their team on a very good contract. He scored 30 before. He had 26 last year. Like, I keep going back. I just want people to realize that these players are not just being given away. And if you want to make that move, I mean, to me, Perfetti is probably a guy that every single general manager, any general manager in a situation like Columbus would be starting the conversation with when you're talking about a player that can come in and potentially play in your top six, produce like that, and potentially give you a much better chance to win. And I don't think the Jets are at all interested in that. But I just think that this trade yesterday with Elias Lindholm, Ken, it tells us all we need to know about the cost for a player of that ilk. And that was for a rental, never mind a guy that gives you 2 more years at a very, very team-friendly number.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if you're the Jets, I mean, could you interest them in Brad Lambert rather than Perfetti? I mean, that would probably be part of the discussion as well. But like where the line in the sand is going to be on a lot of these players now that's what we'll be interested in. And I would even say too, Huss, I mean, what the last couple of years have shown us is that, in a lot of those years, the first rounders aren't what was being shopped out from the teams that are doing the acquiring. Some of them have obviously had to, but again, we got to look at the Barbashev deal. I mean, that's a natural place to look, but it'll be interesting. I mean, because
what was that return?
Depends on the bidding war, right? It was a former first round pick for sure. One of their guys, I think, was a centerman from the QMJHL. But I want to say it was a second, but it might have been a first. We have to get Remo back on the search party there. I don't have it in front of me here, but again, the cost of acquisition was high, but it wasn't crazy.
Here it is. I'm pulling it up right now. It receives.
The guy played in the World Junior team.
Zach Dean.
Yeah, Dean.
Yeah,
Zach
there you
Dean.
go. Right, so he was a late first rounder, right?
Let's see here. Dean. Yeah, he was a 30th overall pick in the 2021 draft. And then there's, of course, the scarcity of the center. Before we're done, and again, like, I've never been huge on Monahan. I know he's really good in faceoffs. I know he's having a big bounce back season this year compared to where he'd been. A lot of people, myself, kind of thought that he was done. The Flames had to give Montreal, and again, he was making a lot more money at that time, but give Montreal a first rounder to get him. But man, at 1.9, he would be a guy that could come in. Rick Bowness would love his prowess in the faceoff circle. Is there a fit there with the Jets? And I know that we've heard Monahan getting Montreal a first rounder. I'm dubious on that, but I mean, again, we're talking about scarcity. It's all about a market, at what time you're buying and what time you're selling. And it does seem like there's a premium on guys that can play in the middle. Certainly the Winnipeg Jets want guys that can win faceoffs. Is there a fit for that? How interested do you think the Jets might be in a player like Monahan? And would he fit? Can he keep up with a guy like Nikolai Ehlers, I guess, is my other question.
Yeah, all fair questions, Huss. We've talked about the Jets' previous interest around the draft time with Sean Monahan. What I would say too is that he is a thoughtful and intellectual player. So I could see him as a fit with Cole Perfetti, right? You could, again, Cole's not a burner, but he's incredibly smart, has great vision. So, and then you have the crazy speed of Ehlers. So, in terms of the orchestra and the conductor, I mean, does that fit? It could. Is it their primary choice? I'm not certain. There's sort of, I've been sort of thinking more of an aim higher approach when it comes to that job, but I could see him being a valuable piece of the puzzle. He's a guy that can help the power play. He has some size, even though, he's not, I wouldn't consider him to be a physical player, but he can be strong on the puck. So I could see him in a fit in that regard, maybe a little bit more than I thought maybe 3 weeks ago. But the most appealing thing with Monahan is the salary, Huss, because I would think, with a little bit of retention on Tanev, if the Jets were looking to add both of the pieces, you could conceivably add Monahan and Tanev, right? And you've been talking about it yourself and with me and others. I mean, the appeal of adding those two players, you might want to try to sign one or both of them, but you're not, beholden to them beyond July 1st, right? So they could fit probably with the machinations of the cap, but you would be able to decide if you were going to keep them around or not. I would just say, Huss, the thing with Monahan is that with the Rangers losing Philip Hedl for the season, that could skew the center market a little bit more, because now, beforehand, when you're the Rangers and you have Zibanejad, Hedl, and Trocheck, you're probably not in the market for a top 2 or 3 center. And now suddenly they're a team that needs to add another centerman. So, now you're adding another team that probably wasn't in there before, and their window is now, Huss, right? I mean, the thing with the Jets, I would say their window is definitely now, but, based on the, extensions for Hellebuck and Scheifele, they probably think that their window is a couple of years, and the Rangers obviously think the same thing. But that's the thing. I mean, only one team wins in the end, so you have to find that sweet spot in terms of what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to, what you think you need to keep around to make another run. But so I could see. I'm. Let's just put it this way: I'm warming to the idea of Monahan, but I think personally, I still think that a guy like Henrique probably fits a little bit better with the speed element, and I think, I don't know who's the better penalty killer, but Huss. And I just think, and the unfortunate thing for Monahan is the injury history, especially recent. Henrique is a guy who has played a lot of game. He's been a little bit more durable.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Again, a lot of it's been bad luck for Monahan. But if I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff, I think you're kind of leaning towards the more durable player. Even if Henrique is a little bit older at this situation. And I'm with you. The beauty of Henrique is that he has not had a lot of playoff games since the early success. So he has to be driven for the opportunity to get the next contract. And that's where the parallel to Stastny makes the most sense to me. He's a guy that could come in and be a great complementary scorer, but he's a guy who, most people think he's probably going to have to take a pay cut on the next deal. But Paul Stastny, with a great playoff, proved that that's not necessarily the case. So, and again, there's probably other candidates that are going to emerge. But again, I also wonder, Huss, for Vancouver was also, very much tied to Jake Gensel in terms of the rumor mill. I don't see them having the flexibility to go out and get Gensel up front. And I don't know about the fit with the Jets there. Obviously the guy can score, but it's interesting. And there's going to be, I love Buchnevich, but he's not a natural center. So unless the Jets are planning on moving Gabriel Velarde in that spot or are comfortable
keeping... Could Giroux play in the middle?
Oh, Claude Giroux could definitely play in the middle, Huss. I just wonder, I love Claude Giroux. I was fortunate enough when I was back at in the post-media days, I covered a playoff series between the Rangers and Flyers. Giroux, incredible leader. Yes, there are some miles there. I just know that the homecoming hasn't gone as well as he had hoped, but I don't know that he's in the position where he's ready to jump ship or bail on the program. But yeah, Claude Giroux is a guy, great experience, been to the final, highly productive player. I just don't think that he's going to be available, which makes the reason why we should be talking about it. We don't think he should be available, but maybe he is, right? Like we got to be looking at outside of the box candidates there too. Jets don't have a ton of right shots, so he would make sense on that front. But yeah, I don't think that it's very likely, but I mean, that's again why we have to at least discuss the opportunity and options out there.
We have to exhaust it all, and he does have a no move, so he'd have to be into doing it as well. What's up for the rest of the day? What do you do after you close up the laptop after gracing us with your presence? And thanks again for doing it. It's great, and we've just enjoyed. We're feeling warm just looking at your background, other than the hot takes.
Well, it is. It's been great here. I know I'm super happy to hear that the weather is great back home and that we're not coming back to the deep freeze when we do make it back there. But yeah, I mean, just a little bit of time around the pool. The Manitoba Golf Tour International Edition will be making a stop tomorrow at the Iberostar Playa Paraiso Golf Club. It's a Pete Dye course about 20 minutes down the road, so it's going to be fun.
Fire a couple pics out on X just to make us more jealous.
Definitely going to be doing that, and just lucky circumstance, I'll be teeing it up with my pal Eric Engels from Sportsnet.ca. There, he happens to be in Cancun. So, no, it's been great. Met a lot of great Canadians out here. Unreal. Service. People are so friendly in this great country, and it's been nice to unplug. But I'm going to be fired up and ready for those final 35 when we get home. Mike McIntyre has the first couple games in Pennsylvania out of the gate, but. The beauty of the post All-Star stretch, even with trade season picking up, it's basically sprint to the finish. It's like 35 games in 70 some days, which is also part of the fun. So it's going to be a great time ahead, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, that last road trip was an interesting one and a fun one. Got to connect with some great friends on that one as well. Great to see folks in the center of the universe. It'll be interesting to see how the All-Star festivities go. I'm sure the Jets representatives will enjoy themselves, and it'll be fun. It's a fun time of year, Huss. We know this. I was happy that my Chiefs prediction came true. I know that was a little nerve-wracking at times there for sure, but too bad for Detroit. I know some people may not feel that way, but that just bit heart-wrenching for the Dan Campbell crew there. But I applaud the cojones, but personally, if I were in those shoes, I may not have coached the exact same way. But I appreciate him adhering to his principles. And again, let's not kid ourselves. A little bit better execution, and we wouldn't be talking about Dan Campbell's decision making, right? Well, I mean, Goff had a guy wide open. He
dropped it. Yeah, if Josh Reynolds catches that 4th and 3, we're maybe talking about a different matchup.
We're saying, hey, great call. What a call!
Great run for Detroit. I hope. By the way, it looks like Dan Quinn's actually getting a head coaching job, not in Seattle with the Commanders. After Ben Johnson said he's staying put, going to try and come back and get to the top of the mountain with the Detroit Lions. Kenny, have a great round tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of the trip, and we'll look forward to seeing you back in the peg next week. Thanks for doing this, buddy.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And cheers. Buenos dias,
yes,
I guess. Let's go with that.
Yeah, you can say hi to the Dolphins, the Ravens, and the Bills, who might be in Cancun as well with you right now as well. All right, there's Ken Wiebe. Great stuff with Weber, and we're really appreciative that he jumped on with us. Of course, he and Rennie will get things going again after Winnipeg Jets hockey, beginning with the game next Tuesday in Pittsburgh. By the way, well over 500 people in here. Great to see everybody out. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already, please. And make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to the channel. We're going to give a shout out to our friends at Little Brown Jug. Of course, big news with Little Brown Jug now available at the arena. You're going to want to check out Craft Beer Corner in section 310 and 126 at the game next Saturday if you're going to the Jets-Penguins game. In the meantime, if you're looking for a great beer, locally produced, that kind of resembles your favorite domestics, Little Brown Jug Generic is the one to get. And right now, when you pick it up at your local beer store or liquor marts, only $19.99 for an 8-pack of Tall Boys. My personal favorite, highly recommended. Check it out the next time. And hey, no better place to pop by than the brewery and tap room on William Avenue. You can try all your Little Brown Jug favorites, get your favorites, and check out their merchandise, including things like this beauty Little Brown Jug hat. Find out more online as well, littlebrownjug.ca, and with local delivery options as well. Speaking of hats, I'm hoping for a Super Bowl champions hat from Royal Sports in a couple weeks for the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll get more into Super Bowl talk next week heading into the big game. But if you're looking for your favorite team, you know it's there at Royal Sports. And, of course, the local team's well represented, the biggest selection of Jets merchandise around with all your favorite jerseys, players, names, numbers. You got it. They'll do it up however you want. Huge Bomber section as well. Might be selling a few more Strevelers, I think, this upcoming few months now that the Strevolution's back. But listen, when it comes to merchandise, for fans, Royal Sports is the number one spot and has been since 40 years, but there's so much more in the store. Lots to take advantage of. Winter, skates, the best selection of hockey equipment in town, snowboards, boots, bindings. Make the most of winter with a trip to Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. And again, hit them up on Instagram as well, at Royal Sports Pembina. And hey, no hockey tonight, unfortunately. It'll be a couple days, but it's still always a great day to head into Boston Pizza for ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and more. And hey, if you are staying at home, despite how nice it is outside, you can always get the great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. We're going to check in with Sport Manitoba in a minute. But big night tonight at U of W. The Duckworth Challenge gets going. Manitoba, Winnipeg. The highlight of the local basketball schedule. Women going early, men going at 8 p.m., and our pal Joey Slattery will be doing color. Let's bring in Slats right now to get together for the big, to get the latest on the big crosstown rivalry. Slats, what's good, buddy? How are you?
Oh, I'm great. I love that intro. That is probably the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me on air, or said about me, I should say.
You know what? You worked in a different world for a long time. It's all good times now that we're in the digital universe, Joey.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it's exciting times in basketball too. This is like peak season for Winnipeg basketball right now, Huss.
It is. I mean, things are getting tight, and you're running down the stretch to the playoffs, and obviously the women's teams with both the Bisons and Westman sort of in rebuild mode. I mean, battling to try to sneak into the playoffs, but I mean, man, do we have a couple tilts set up between University of Winnipeg and University of Manitoba. Both teams 11-5, tied. We're basically 5-6 in the standings right now in Canada West, and it's shaping up for a hell of a 3 days from both from the south side on Saturday and tonight at the Duckworth Center.
Yeah, I mean, even the women's game. I mean, it's the Duckworth Classic or Challenge, right?
So the rivalry is real.
The rivalry is real, so people are going to be up for it for sure. And these women's teams, it's still a playoff spot on the line, right? They are neck and neck as well. It's not been a season that, either of them, I think, would have wanted, but, they're starting to now. The Westmen have got a little bit of confidence. The last game I saw them play, they started to click a little bit. Things are starting to come together. And then the Bisons, I mean, they've really come along since the start of the season. Autumn Agar has been injured, but they've really found their I guess chemistry in the last, let's say, 2 weeks, and I think that Manitoba has the edge on the women's game for sure. If over the Westmen, they just have a little bit more experience. Lauren Bartlett is unbelievable as a point guard, so I think they do have the advantage there. But I think they're going to be entertaining games. But on the men's side, this is a stacked Duckworth Challenge, right? Like you mentioned it, they're neck and neck in the standings. They have the same record. It's been a journey on how they got there. I mean, Manitoba's kind of been rolling along. They're 11-5. The Westmen have hit so many stumbles along the way. I mean, they came out as the favorite in Canada West not the favorite in Canada West, mind you, but out of the two teams, they were ranked as high as third in the country at one point, second in Canada West behind Victoria. And they've just steadily dropped eventually out of the top 10 rankings, where the Bisons have gone up. They started at 10 and now they're at 6, and they've been stuck there for a little bit behind Victoria and UBC. But these are two teams now that they are 11-5. There's 4 games left on the regular season before the Canada West Championships take place at the University of Manitoba later in February. So this is a big tune-up. Now, for the Winnipeg Westmen, I think it's a more important game simply because they haven't really figured it out yet. It's just been a different time, or a different, I guess they've been playing under that pressure they haven't played under before, right? They've always been kind of the underdogs, and they upset Manitoba to go to the national tournament. Well, this year they had the expectations, and I don't know if it's been an effect, but it's definitely not helped in terms of their play. Like it's something that's been hindering them, and they've been struggling. Certain guys have been struggling, but if they can come out and split or win this series against Manitoba with 2 games left in Regina, who's currently at the top of the standings in Canada West, that suddenly erases everything behind you and gets you in playoff ready position off the hop. And it is one elimination. There's no room for error come that tournament.
You'll be part of the broadcast team for tonight's game for Bison's Westman at Duckworth. As far as the men's matchup goes, let's focus on the home team tonight, the Westmen. You talked about the season, the expectations that they had, which really have not been around that program for a long, long time. I wanted to ask you in particular about a former guest on our show, the guy that was really the star last year, Sean Moranin, who also spent the summer with the Sea Bears, although not getting into game action. Is he still the leader on the team? Tell us a little bit about where Moranin's at right now, and who the other big impact players are that the Westmen will be leaning on tonight against UM.
Moran is certainly the leader of this team, the most important factor for this team. He's been a steady climb, right? Like you look at his career and he's steadily climbed to the top. I mean, he's one of the leaders. I believe he leads the conference in assists right now. He's up there in steals as well. I mean, last game they were against McEwen, who's, been had a struggle for the last few years. I think they're like 0-70 something. And he was just putting on a show, right? Like it was mixtape Moran, and I was calling just, the no-look pass and these nice dimes, but he's going to be an integral part of their success. But they also have Mikhail Mikhailov, and he's a big body. He's one of the top rebounders in the conference, as well as Donald Stewart. And these are two guys that can stretch the floor as well and shoot the three. But I think the post game is going to be huge for them. I mean, because the Bisons are just as talented, and they also have the ability to stretch the floor. So I think for the Westmen, it's just going to be a matter of, get it down to the block and try to beat them up as much as you can, maybe draw some fouls and get to the foul line, especially a guy like Mikhailov. He's got a pretty good free throw percentage. I think it's over 75 into the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, they get to the line, they'll get some free points, right? So that's going to be the key. But also Moranin, if the Westmen, or the Bisons rather, can't zero in on him and you can let him maneuver, he's quick, he's deceptive both on offense and defense, he can cause a lot of problems. So the Westmen, for sure, the key is, for me, Sean Moranin and Mike Mikhailov. Those are two guys that, they have, the chemistry's just been growing since last year, really. And the last couple of games, they've really started to click. But they also need guys like Malachi Alexander, to find that consistency. Alberto Gordo, a guy who was, came out of the gate hot last year. He's having a bit of a slump this year. He's not been consistent. In fact, in that last 2 games against McEwen, the first game, he didn't score at all. Right. So he's got to start finding his touch. And I think these games for them are more about finding that touch and getting into that rhythm and peaking at the right time, as they say, like now's the time to do it. And as I said earlier, when you go into a rivalry game, that's going to help, especially if you can beat now what would be considered an upset to Manitoba, right? And put yourself back on that Canada West talking block. Well,
and I mean, the Westmen, starting this home and home on home court will really look to get their win tonight, because I can guarantee that the Manitoba Bisons remember that game last year with everything on the line to go to the Nationals at Investors Group Athletic Center, and we're looking to get them back. I mean, focusing on the Bisons for a minute, I mean, I think certainly people that paid attention to the Sea Bears knows all about Simon Hildebrand. He was the Rookie of the Year last year in U Sports. I saw he had a 41-point game earlier this year. The sophomore season seems to be going well for Simon. Tell us a little bit about him in particular, as well as the rest of the squad that will be on the road tonight at Duckworth.
Well, Simon's been interesting, right? Because there was some inconsistency at the start of the season, and I think there were some I wouldn't say injuries, but I think he had some ailments that were bugging him a little bit. But they're gone. I mean, that 41 points wasn't just against anybody; it was against the top-ranked team in the country at the time, in the University of Victoria, and that was marqued as Diego Mafia, who played for Vancouver last year and is the leading scorer in the country right now, against Simon Hildebrandt, because they had never played against each other in U Sports or Canada West, but Mafia was out with a hip flexor, so he didn't play in those 2 games, but that didn't matter. I mean, Victoria is still a great team. Ronaldo Robinson had a 45-point game the next night, right? So this is Simon Hildebrandt really hitting his stride, and I mean, when he gets cooking from 3-point land, like, you got to watch out, because here's a guy who, can take you down to the post, and he's got great footwork down low, but he can play anywhere, right? Like, he's got decent enough handles that he can carry the ball. He could play high post, low post, stretch out to the 3, and he's a problem for whoever's defending him, right? But he's not the only weapon that the Bisons have, and that's kind of the luxury that the Bisons have had this year too. Guys like Kieran O'Hara, Darren Watts, who's really put on a show. And this is I hate to say, you borrow a Lakers term as a Celtics fan, but they've got some showtime in their game, Huss. I tell you, like, you're going to go there and you're going to see a few dunks a game. And I'm not talking about, open break, one-hand dunks. Like, you're talking posters on some of these guys, right? Jonam Kazadi's another guy that had having a big season. Tito Obasoto off the bench. So the Bisons really have the depth. And I haven't even mentioned Mason Krause, who's also one of the elite point guards in Canada West right now. And that's the matchup I think I'm most looking forward to, is the guards. Mason Krause against Sean Moranen, the 3rd-year guard from Manitoba and the 5th-year guard, senior guard from Winnipeg. That is going to be a showdown. And you know what? It's something to be proud of for Winnipeg, because those are 2 born and bred Winnipeggers that developed here and are playing at the top of their game here at home. And this is our last chance to see them play against each other, because Moranen will be gone next year. So if, I'm not here to promote anything, but if you want to go and see some good basketball, you might as well go to this. I mean, I think the atmosphere is going to be ruckus, as you said, and you've been to that UW gym. It's like that intimate dungeon, right? It's got that gritty feel to it that I love, and I think it's going to be a great matchup. And same at the U of M. When that place is packed, it is loud.
Well, it's funny. Historically, and being a U of M guy growing up, I mean, we always loved, whether it was the volleyball teams, whether it was the basketball teams going at it, that UW-UM rivalry. And I think we saw it taken to a whole new level last year with the game between these 2 clubs, with the Nationals on the line. And, the Bisons were favored. It was a huge disappointment. They could not sink a shot for a good portion of that second half. And the Westmen pulled up, a big upset in the game, and arguably the biggest win in their program in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
You get to today, and you mentioned, a player like Moranen, who's been so great for that program, playing in his final Duckworth Challenge. I often say, legitimately, you can just throw the records out when these 2 teams come and play each other. But the fact of the matter is, the records are exactly the same, and there's so much on the line. I mean, considering where these teams are at, what they've been through, the history, the recent history, I think you've got a scene set for one of the best home-and-home series between these 2 programs in a long, long time.
The drama writes itself, right? Like, it's just kind of all worked out. And, even you look at the records, the Bisons are favored just because the losses that they had were against better teams, right? I wouldn't say any were upsets. They lost 2 very close games at UBC. UBC, I think right now, is currently ranked 4th in the country. And then they split with Victoria. So, these losses have come against some good teams, but, they swept Regina 2 games to none when they were here, when Regina was in Manitoba a few weeks ago. But then you look on the other side, the Westmen dropped 2 to the University of Saskatchewan, who are not really part of any conversation, right? They have a new coach of a second year, and Jamie Campbell's. They're just kind of getting their wheels. That was a huge win for that program, but devastating for the Westmen, right? So that's what I talk about with, like, this rivalry. Use what you can, but you can't lose sight of what the goal is, right? Is to get the best positioning possible at the Canada West tournament. Hopefully, maybe top 4 get a bye into that first round. But this is, like, the Westmen have to lean into this as their playoff game. This is the game where you're going to have that playoff intensity. both teams want to be on top of the other, right? Like no one wants to be the second place Winnipeg team when it comes to university basketball in the city. So it's going to be a battle, but I think, for the Bidens, they're rolling right now. They are definitely the favorites, but a huge opportunity for the Westmen if they can come in and definitely split, but if they can take 2 and then they're leapfrogged ahead of Manitoba, they can flip the script. Like they can literally flip the script of the whole season in this weekend. Manitoba, on the other hand, could do the same and just put them in the rearview mirror and not even worry about them. And who knows if they play them at the Canada West Championships, right? So there's a lot on the line. This rivalry has been growing for years. And as you well know, it's always been a rivalry. But with the addition of the CBL and the guys that you've not seen play in the CBL, but that have been working with those guys all summer, right? Like the Sean Moranins and the Mason Krauses of the world, Ryan Luke, who's also the sixth man for the University of Winnipeg. We're seeing talent at an all-time high. This isn't the university basketball I remember when I was in university. Nothing close. Like the game has gotten so good and these athletes are so good that it's next level, right? So, and they take this very, very seriously. So you can bet tonight and on Saturday, these are going to be some really well-fought games.
Yeah, listen, you won't be making a bad decision if you get out to Duckworth tonight or IGAC on Saturday evening and see these teams go at it, both the men's and the women's squads of the University of Winnipeg and the University of Manitoba in the annual Duckworth Challenge. I know Mike and Kirby will be getting ready to go and having the fellas ready for, truly a special game and one that is circled on the calendar the second the schedule comes out, but even more impactful for both games because of where the teams are heading into tonight's action. One of the other things that I think has been a real boost for the youth sports teams has been the visibility coming off the Sea Bears season. In a way, it was the Sea Bears taking advantage of that incredible atmosphere at a packed IGAC last year when the Bisons and Westmen played that game to sort of set the stage for their season. We know how incredibly successful the Sea Bears year was, and there'll be a number of young men, including Hildebrand, who we expect to be back, that we'll see playing for the Sea Bears this summer and moving forward. Just quickly on the Sea Bears, Joey, looking forward to the season again. I'm sure you are. Today's free agency right now, the official start of CEBL free agency. And I would imagine over the next few days, we'll start to hear some signings trickle in. And I'm sure certainly from a Winnipeg standpoint, particularly with the fans, most interested in will some of the top players be back from last year's team, like the one and only Teddy Buckets, who's having a heck of a year overseas.
Yeah, and he's on the protected list. There's 5 players that are protected. Teddy Buckets, as far as I know, plans to come back. I can't see him not coming back. He had such a good season here last year. It kind of catapulted him a little bit in Europe. He played a little bit in Belgium before going to the Riders of the British Basketball League, which is one of the top tier leagues outside of the NBA. I know he has a really good relationship with head coach Mike Taylor. And, we saw that last year. I think that's what's kind of helped him kind of move his game up a level. And he's the reigning player of the year, right? So I think that for a guy like Teddy Allen, that's something to prove. So, he hasn't, it hasn't been announced yet. There hasn't been any commitment, but, from, talking to him even last year, he really enjoyed this, as did the whole team and teams across the league. So what I'm interested to see this year is how many new guys are coming in here, how many players are reaching out to the Sea Bears thinking, maybe I can give you service. Because I know last year Mike Taylor talked about how hard it was to recruit because there wasn't really anything, right? There was no team there. No one really knew what the city's basketball community was like or what the scene would be at the arena. And then, the inaugural season happened and it was a huge success. And people, like the players playing at Canada Life Center, really enjoyed it, right? So I'm interested to see who the new players are going to be because there's definitely going to be some changes. I expect that protected 5, if they're eligible to come back, they will. Like a Teddy Allen, I wonder, if the NBA comes calling, then maybe he can't play here, right? And that'd be totally understandable. But if everything is, status quo from last year, I would imagine they're all coming back. And but I'm interested to see what pieces are coming around, for the Sea Bears with CEBL veterans. I know there are a few that are interested in playing here have been in talks. No decisions have been made as of yet, and we're still monitoring announcements to see when those signings are going to happen. It's not exactly free agency frenzy like it is in the NHL, so who knows when we'll start seeing these roll out, but it's going to be an exciting time for sure for the Sea Bears because they do have a strong foundation. Chad Posthumous, another guy I'm sure will be back this year. So they've got a strong nucleus in place, and it's just going to be complementary adds from here on in, and I think they're in for another successful season. But like the Westmen, there's going to be expectations now with the Sea Bears, right? So we'll see how that affects the team as they kick off the season in May. And one other note too, I can't wait to see the Duckworth Challenge be played at Canada Life Center. I think it has to happen.
Oh, you know what? It is such a great call, and I think as basketball continues to grow, the Sea Bears get more entrenched. You've got that court ready to go. Looking ahead, and even if it's just once a year, you plan for a massive celebration of basketball. I mean, hell, bring the volleyball teams in too, and just have it a massive day for both schools. Would love to see that happen. We had a great chat with Mike Taylor, head coach of the Sea Bears. I guess a couple weeks ago about the off season. He's very much looking forward to this time, and I'm sure he'll be throwing up the live stream tonight, seeing a couple guys in the program go head-to-head. For tonight, the women tip off at 6, the men tip off at 8 at the Duckworth Center at the University of Winnipeg. And on Saturday, it's a matinee. Women at 2, the men's game at 4 o'clock. And if you want to see some high-level basketball with a lot of intensity and a lot on the line, it is the biggest 2 days in local hoops all year long, the Duckworth Challenge. University of Manitoba and University of Winnipeg getting going tonight at U of W and back at U of M on Saturday. Slats, great talking to you, buddy. Enjoy the games, and we'll see you out at the court.
Always a pleasure, Huss. We'll see you soon.
Oh, great stuff with Slats. Yeah, Duckworth Center tonight, the place to be. 6 o'clock women's game, 8 p.m., Bison and Westman in men's basketball, and then return trip to IGAC, U of M, Saturday afternoon, 2 o'clock for the women, 4 o'clock for the men. Nothing better than that crosstown rivalry between the University of Winnipeg and the University of Manitoba. And I did a shout out to probably Dave Larkins and the gang out at Westman Athletics, mentioning that I believe Sean Moranin might have be coming back for another year with the Westmen. That's good news. I was looking at the stats. He's just about 2 assists clear of number 2 in Canada West. He's 6.9 assists a game. Next player is 5.1. What a fun young man he is, and we had a great time talking to him last year. So let's hope for a couple great games in the crosstown rivalry, both tonight and on Saturday afternoon. Got to give a shout out to our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. Just seeing Kenny out there on the beach. This is making me think about summery things. We talked a little baseball yesterday with Logan Watkins, the new skip of the Gold Eyes. And, of course, it also means getting out on the water and fishing. And if you folks are thinking, whether personally or for your business or a corporate retreat, thinking about an incredible fishing opportunity, Aikens Lake is the spot. Fly-in fishing where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, and with world-class fishing and even more world-class hospitality from the wonderful people of the Aikens Lake family. Find out more on their social media accounts at Aikens Lake, but I suggest you go to aikenslake.com and get in touch and find out about booking and availabilities for the 2024 season. Again, that's aikenslake.com, and I can't wait to get back out there this summer. Always the highlight of my year. We're not done yet. Let's do a little Sport Manitoba. It takes a community to play segment. Looking forward to this one. Susanne Dandenault, member of the Manitoba Sports, member of the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame, joins us now to talk a little bit more about being involved in sport after a very great playing career. And of course, it takes a community to play with Sport Manitoba was brought to you and supported by our friends at Manitoba and Liquor and Lotteries. Let's welcome in Susanne. It is time for another It Takes a Community to Play segment with our friends at Sport Manitoba, proudly sponsored by Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. And what a treat it is to welcome in Manitoba Sports Hall of Famer Susanne Dandenault to the program. Susanne, welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk. How are you?
I'm great, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
It's a real pleasure. You have, you're involved in so many things, and it is a perfect topic for us here on our It Takes a Community to Play segment. But first of all, just quickly give people a rundown of your time as an athlete in both athletics and weightlifting.
You know what? It was an honor to be able to participate at the levels I did in track and field. Started early in junior high, I'm going to say, progressed through to going to the University of Washington on an athletic scholarship, which was a wonderful experience. Unfortunately, they lost in the national championship this year, but I was right there cheering them on. And then came back home and continued, pursuing my athletic career. I was on the national junior team in track and field prior to going out to Seattle, but loved every moment of that. Came home, saw that maybe the future wasn't as bright as I'd hoped in track and field. It would have been very difficult to get to an international level as a senior athlete. So started tinkering in weightlifting, which my good friend Teresa Brick convinced me to come and try a bit more seriously than I had been. And that was really the sport that took me around the world. And I was fortunate enough to be a national team member for 9 years, 9-time national champion, and was the first woman in Canada to clean and jerk 300 pounds, and the third woman in North America to do that task. So couldn't do that without the community behind me of coaches and medical staff and the support of weightlifting and track and field and Sport Manitoba generally. So, it was always a commitment of mine to give back where possible. So that brings me to where we are today.
Just quickly on your athletic career, it is an interesting transition, but we do see that often with people that, excel in one form that maybe realize that, there's a certain ceiling to it, and then pivot to another sport where you sort of have a big step ahead. And I think that was pretty clear from going from athletics to weightlifting. You were pretty much set from everything that you'd done before in a totally different sport.
Yeah, it's certainly, there are a number of transitions that work really well in sport and gymnastics to weightlifting. There's a few of them, and I wasn't ready to enter the real world, let's call it, in a 9-to-5 job and things like that. So having another outlet in sport certainly was an attractive pursuit. And Teresa Brick is a hell of a negotiator, so I really have to chalk it up to her persistence as, trying to get me into the gym and getting another female involved in weightlifting, to be honest. So it was an easy transition, and like I said, I wasn't quite ready to give up the sport thing, and I'm very happy that I didn't.
Susanne, you're the founding member of the Manitoba Athletes Association. Tell us about founding something like that and what the goal was, and how important it was to you as an athlete to create that body.
Of course, there had already been a movement nationally with the Canadian Athletes Association, which is kind of how we got that MAA acronym. The Canadian version of it has become Athletes Can, which still exists today with a lot of power and influence in how athletes are treated. And this really all came from like the boycotts in the 80s and how athletes were the ones paying the price for when a country would boycott. Why should it be the athletes that don't get to participate? So, athlete rights have always been important to me and to many, and I wasn't the only one. Andrew Lamont from rowing, we had a number of people involved in Winnipeg who felt the same way, and with the support and suggestion from Sport Manitoba, which is fantastic that we have a sport organizing body here in this province that sees the need and importance of athlete rights. So, it was really all of that came together with a bunch of people who just have a deeper interest and passion for sport and for those who participate. So it was wonderful to be there. It's been defunct, to be honest, for a while now, but I think the concept of athlete rights remains top of mind in the provincial sport organizations in Manitoba.
You moved on at one point, became president of the Manitoba Weightlifting Association. As a former athlete, I'm sure you had a special, unique view, especially at such a high level. But, a lot of times people are sort of like, oh, they're burnt out after doing it. Why was it important to you to stay within the sport, moving into that role to help the future generation of weightlifters?
It's an interesting observation, and weightlifting, not a big sport. You don't have a large pool to pick from when you're looking for leadership, and part of it is you're in the sport. You have other people who remain in the sport. You want to see it succeed. So if people aren't stepping up at the time, then I typically am the kind of person that will step up. And, I bridged a time frame. We had more people come to the table nearing the end of my tenure, and I felt it was okay to walk away from that role in the organization. But at that time, you can always find a bit more time. Like I'm not someone to sit around and not be doing something. So if I'm not working on something, I'm bored. So it seemed necessary, and I'm very happy I did it. Also gives you a perspective on that leadership looking down to help you be a better leader in other ways.
Well, of course, continuing to lead. You're the current board chair of Sport Manitoba. Can you talk about why it's to you been important to stay involved and continue making these contributions to obviously a sport and sport in general that's been such a big part of your life?
So the appointment to the Sport Manitoba presidency came as a government appointment, but extremely proud and honored to be seen to be fit to play that role, and especially as the first woman to do it. So I feel I'm bringing a perspective unique to this role for the first time. Female, retired competitive athlete, multi-sport. I do think that what I can bring here is significant, and it's a great group to work with. And again, just whatever I can do to give back. Sport has given me so much. I attribute everything that I do today and the characteristics I have to my involvement in sport. And if I can give back, then I will. And to do it as the president of Sport Manitoba will be the pinnacle of my leadership in sport, and it's what I owe to the sport and the province for the support they've given me to date. And I've taken the bull by the horns here, and I'm excited to see what I can do to support sport in the province.
Susanne Dandenault is with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk as part of It Takes a Community to Play with Sport Manitoba. I wanted to ask you about the significance of the entire sport community working to both recruit, but also train and retrain athletes, coaches, and officials, because all of those roles are so incredibly important, not to mention the volunteers that make every sport happen at pretty much every level.
I don't think I realized the enormity of the task until I became the president of the chair of the board of directors. The magnitude was lost on me as to how many people we're talking about, and I can really appreciate all the work Sport Manitoba does in guiding the sports across Manitoba. It's not an easy task, you're right, and people are taxed for their time. It really is someone who's passionate about what they do in sport to keep them in. And how can we continue to encourage those people to remain active? Because you can't have a competition without a coach, without the athlete, without an official, and without the volunteers. So if we run dry in any of those areas, we are in a predicament. And I feel Manitobans really take pride when they can say their daughter, their friend, their classmate is on the national team competing at the Olympics. We don't want to lose that. So Sport Manitoba plays a huge role in working with the provincial sport organizations to help continue to develop all of these areas within sport. And to be honest, Manitoba Liquor Lotteries really stepped up to help us do this in last year with their substantial 3-year contribution. It really makes some of the things we're trying to do, they're giving us a better platform to do that. So I really do have to applaud their commitment to sport in Manitoba.
Susanne, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned about Teresa Brick earlier, in that you would come from athletics and she was a real hard negotiator to try to get you into weightlifting. At this point, going into 2024, from your perspective, how far have we come along with athletic opportunities for girls and females as well, and in some more niche sports, if you will, like weightlifting, that you don't historically associate with women, although they're winning Olympic gold medals and doing incredible things around the world?
Absolutely, they are. I'm going to suggest that there is always more that can be done, and truly for opportunities for Manitobans of any gender and any ability. It's a limitation in Canada to be able to provide enough of those opportunities to all of our athletes. I do feel Manitoba is ahead of the game in terms of supporting its female athletes, and female and those identifying as female, and those who are neutral in their gender identity. I do feel Manitoba supports those areas maybe better than some. And I haven't done a ton of research across the country of what that sport looks like, but speaking from my own experience, there are opportunities out there. They can always be more. And sometimes you have to go hunt for them yourself. But I feel that's the Canadian system, unfortunately. We're not as focused on the development across the country until you get to that level where it makes sense to give a bit more effort. And so I feel that there's always more that can be done. But that said, we're doing pretty good with what we're doing.
Susanne, one final message, and I always try and bring it back when we're having these conversations with people from across the sporting landscape. And you have such incredible experience at literally every level. A message to former athletes that might be missing it or thinking about, contributing back in some ways, as well as people that maybe have an interest in the sport but don't have that great history or connection as to how much of a difference and impact they can make to the sport, but also for themselves through things like officiating, as well as just volunteering and making events in this sport keep going.
I cannot encourage everyone enough to participate in any way they can. You may think that coming out to one competition to officiate once may be not enough, but it's not true. Every little bit helps, whether you are someone completely new to sport, which there will be a ton of people out there like that. Please come and try. We are looking, I'll say every sport is looking for directors to sit on their board to give them some guidance. And it doesn't have to be sport specific. It can be anybody. Everybody will bring some nugget of expertise that board may not be aware of. And truly, you don't need that background in sport to be able to make those contributions. For those out there who are retired or are not as involved as they used to be, what a great feeling it is to be back here. And you know what? It's reminiscent. You go back there, you look at the people doing what they're doing, working so hard. You remember doing that. And you do remember the people that were there to support you. And here in Canada and Manitoba, people are not here because it's given them a lot of money or power or fame. They are there because they love the sport. So, if you loved the sport at one point, hopefully we can encourage you back to keep helping out, because everything makes a difference.
This has been so much fun. Gang, if you're thinking about, finding more about opportunities to get involved, go to sportmanitoba.ca. There's a ton of information there about it. And to the honored member of the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame, Susanne Dandenault, thanks so much for the time. It was great having you on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I appreciate your time as well.
That's another Takes a Community to Play with Sport Manitoba, brought to you by Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries on Winnipeg Sports Talk. All right, great stuff. Thanks to Susanne for jumping on. And, of course, Sport Manitoba and Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries will have another episode. We're going to talk reffing next week, or officiating, I should say, not necessarily refereeing, although I guess the officials, the referees have different names from sport to sport, but we all know how important that is. But again, thanks to Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries for their support as well. And if you've missed these, obviously you can go back and watch them on our channel, but Sport Manitoba YouTube channel as well, putting up a bunch of our conversations here on Winnipeg Sports Talk for that, and we do appreciate it. All right, we've got this By the way, stick around. We're doing a hacksaw raid, so don't go anywhere if you're with us on YouTube. And can we please get up to 200 likes? We've got a huge show today. We're at like 187 or something like that. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up for us. Thank you very much. This is going to be a little combo. Why not question of the day, as well as the Coolbet lines. Because tonight is, what do we call it, Remis? It's the All Star Thursday right now, which is basically a big cocktail party.
NHL All Star Thursday. I think they have the draft. They're picking the teams, bringing in celebrity captains. So they're going to be mixing it up on stage, trying to show off their great personalities. So I can't wait to see what unfolds here.
Are you familiar with Tate McRae?
Okay, you asked me this at the game on Saturday, and I wasn't, but then I saw people tweeting about her. I did familiarize myself.
What about all you in chat? Are you familiar with Tate McRae? Young Canadian music phenom, former dancer, has like almost 1 billion with a B streams on Spotify. I've just found out about her. Interested to see her performance. Seems to be a bit of a star, to be honest. So I think she'll be excellent there with the group. But yes, why not question of the day? Who are you taking to be the last player picked in the All-Star draft tonight? And why I would say that, obviously, we love doing the why not question of the day for not AutoCorp at Waverly and McGillivray, but we can also place a little wager on this, which takes us to the Coolbet lines tonight. So there is a great basketball game. That's where I'm going with the play of the day for Coolbet. Battle of former Raptors, OG versus Pascal Siakam, the Knicks, who I think have rattled off like 11 in a row at home at the Mecca against the Pacers. Knicks are 3-point favorites. But if we look here to Coolbet and click on NHL and NHL All Star Weekend, Remis, we can choose who the last overall pick will be. We can also pick the first pick, and that line has moved. Willie Nylander was the favorite when we were doing the lock shop earlier today at plus 350. That's now gone down to plus 200. So I'm not sure whether Austin Matthews, I believe he's one of the captains, has the first pick. That we already know that. But Willie Nylander, Nylander and Marner, the top two players, obviously with them being Leafs. But first overall pick, Nylander 2-1, Mitch 5-1, Pasta plus 650, Sid 7-1, Kucherov 8, Elias 9, Demko 12. If they had any sense, they'd go to Connor Hellebuck at 20-1. But that's the first pick. But I'm more interested in the last overall pick, Reem. So here are options, gang. 4-1, Tom Wilson, Boone Jenner, Frank Vetrano. Oliver Bjorkstrand is plus 450. Tomas Hertl plus 750. And then Trocheck 18-1. Talbot, Bob, Rob Thomas, all 20-1. Elias, Nick Suzuki, 22, Brady Tkachuk, and we can go down the list. No, obviously Connor Hellebuck won't be that guy, but Helly is in there at 7-1. Where's Kyle Connor? Kyle Connor is like right at the bottom.
Whoa.
80-1.
I'm shocked.
And you'd be insane. Well, he's not going to go last. He's too good. Do we go for one of these chalky picks like Tom Wilson or Boone Jenner, Vetrano? Bjorkstrand, maybe?
Yeah. What if they played a prank and did it to Brady Tkachuk and were like, haha, Brady, no one's gonna take you, or you're gonna be last. He plays for Ottawa. I guess Matthew Tkachuk's not in the game, right? So that I don't know if that would apply. But
yeah,
I'm just trying to go think of some crazy theory where they don't want to pick the actual worst guy. I don't think Tom.
Yes.
There's no way Tom Wilson's going last because he'll just beat up. He'll just beat up
get
someone.
The shit kicked out of him if they do that.
Yeah,
all the captains, in fact.
Yeah, so I'd be afraid if I got Tom Wilson last. So I wouldn't want that. So
the guy that I would take is Cam Talbot, who is 20-1.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if all the other goalies go, they know they don't need to pick a goalie and they can just wait till the end.
You think they're that smart?
No, not even close. Not even close.
Yeah, I think that's not. I mean, I think that's a good theory. At 20-1, you might as well do that.
I don't know. Someone's got to get in. Well,
someone's gonna be last. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's a defenseman. Like, do you need a defenseman in the All Star game?
I guess
you kind of do. It's 3-on-3.
Yeah, but it's just. I mean, it's just.
You're not getting them for defense.
Anyways, all of the picks, first overall pick, last overall pick, all up there at Coolbet. I mean,
some of these are such high odds. Like, you think it's worth doing like a couple like small bets and like hoping you hit one big?
Yeah,
because the odds are just so crazy. Like do you think it's really going to be Jenner, Vetrano, or Bjorkstrand? Like, I really don't think it's going to be Tom Wilson.
No, you're right.
Maybe it's Bjorkstrand and they want to like make jokes the whole time about that Instagram video. I don't know.
That's right. Are you sure you should have canceled that Airbnb, Oliver?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a tough pick. Anyways, give us your thoughts on who you'd be taking in the chat for the Why Not question of the day. First overall, so the Matthews, McDavid, McKinnon, and Hughes are the captains, and I guess it'll be Luke Hughes, or maybe Jack will still be participating, but he's not playing in the game.
Yeah.
And who is it that got added for him?
Jesper Bratt.
Jesper Bratt. That's right.
He's
a member of my fantasy team. So there you go. We do have odds for the skills competition. And I'm pumped for this. So McDavid plus 650, Makar 8-1, Pasta and Draisaitl and McKinnon and Kucherov 9-1, Matthews and Elias and Barzal and Quinn Hughes 10-1, and then I think it's JT Miller and Willie Nylander at 11-1. I will just quickly, before we roll over to Hacksaw, if you check out the odds for the NHL season bets, Hellebuck's the favorite to win the Vezina at -125. Quinn Hughes, a big favorite for the Norris at -169. I think there's value at Cale Makar at +135, to be honest with you. It really does seem like it's a two-horse race. Jets are the favorite for the Central Division to win the Central at +150. Avs +175. Dallas +275. The Canucks still the favorite for the Pacific Division at -115, but Edmonton just -150. But I did get something added today, Reem. I'm looking at these Hart Trophy because we were talking about Hellebuck and the season that he's had and the numbers the Jets have put up. I do see a scenario where the Jets, this would be a great scenario, where the Jets maintain the top goals against in the league, and Hellebuck is the shoo-in for the Vezina. But if the Jets are like right there battling for the President's Trophy at the end of the season, he will get Hart Trophy consideration. And we've added him to the list. 75-1. If you want to put a little sprinkle on Hellebuck to win the Hart Trophy as the MVP of the NHL. So that is up there right now. All the other trophies available. Playoffs, like Eastern Conference winner, Western Conference winner, Cup odds. Jets have gone from 12-1 to 15-1, by the way, if you want to get in. And how about this for the Jets' total season over-under points? The line is 108.5. At -110. If you want to add one more point to that and have them crack the 110-point barrier, +135. And if they go completely crazy in the second half, if you want over 119.5, it's +1,500. Just looking at those numbers making me very happy about the over 94.5 bet that we made at the start of the year.
That's funny. I think Dom has them projected. If he put out his latest projections, he's got them at 112. So
really,
let me just confirm.
Well, do we double down on the +135 at over 109.5?
I'm not going to tell you what to do there, but I'm just going to say I think Dom's got them projected. Let me just...
Here, this is a little lock shot bonus for you folks. As I talked about this today on the program, we were looking, and there's totals for all teams for their points at the end of the season.
Yeah.
The Calgary Flames total is 86.5. They are 500 right now. So to get to 87 points, you need to have 5 more wins than you do regulation losses. That would get you to 87 points. Well, Calgary's even through 49 games. They just traded Elias Lindholm. There's the potential that Tanev, Hanifin might be on the move. And I went through their schedule, and it is rough. So I've put a big chunk on the under 86.5 for Calgary. That is definitely my favorite pick right now of everything up here and available. But it's all there at Coolbet. This is a fun time with the league on the break to kind of get back into some of the futures. So it's all there. And if you haven't played there before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200.
Yeah, I have Dom's. He tweeted out his projected standings at the All Star break. So he has the Jets at 111 points. So there's certainly, if you believe in Dom's model, there's some value there. And he's got Calgary at 87 points, Huss. Now that's Calgary at the way they are now. So if you think I agree, if you think they're going to be trading some guys, then they would be getting worse. So
I have already made my wager under 86.5 for Calgary. But it'll come right down to those final couple games as well. All right, listen, before we go, Reem, so we're going to raid Hacksaw. Can we get a quick Jets All-Star break update via Instagram?
Yeah, Jets All-Star break update. Chuck Hellebuck has been posting pictures of them on Instagram, international influencer Chuck Hellebuck. So thank you for keeping us posted. He's at Disney. Here's the Here's the
Do you have some weird voice effect on your mic right now?
No, I think it might be sending to you twice.
Oh, okay.
How about now? I think that's better.
Yeah.
So Chuck, they're at Disney. There's that. I saw Josh Morrissey on his Instagram stories posting pictures at a beach. And then Dominic Tornado's on Instagram story has posting a picture from the gym. No days off. Dominic Tornado doing everything he can, stay in the lineup, and have a good second half. So shout out to
these guys are at the
Tony.
beach. He's throwing plates around a gym in Edina, Minnesota.
That's right.
Gotta love it.
Not
Got
a gym.
to love it.
Yeah, not a gym on the beach. He's in Edina, Minnesota.
All right. Hey, before we go, again, if you want to join us for the whiskey tasting night along with the Jets game against the Dallas Stars, get your tickets before they are all gone. Hopefully there's still a few left. The link is in the description of the video. And if you're with us in chat right now, right at the top of the chat, looking forward to seeing any of you WSTers that want to sip some great whiskey, learn about it, and hopefully watch the Jets whoop the Dallas Stars. That's on February 29th. Looking forward to that. And we've got the draft tonight, which we will check out, and a big show tomorrow. Guess who's back? Dennis Bayak will be joining us on the show. Cannot wait for that. We'll talk a little bit more about this Lindholm trade and where that leaves the Jets with Murat Atesh. And we will have a special visit from Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. However, we're going to go raid Lee right now on YouTube. So let's go do that. Thanks to everyone that joined us today. Susanne Dandenault, Joey Slats, Ken Wiebe, Scott Billeck. Great show. Tons of people in here today. And we're going to do it again tomorrow. Big Friday show heading into All-Star Weekend. And then it's back to work for the Winnipeg Jets next week. In fact, actually practicing on Sunday. Stick around. We're going to see Hacksaw. Join us tomorrow for Dennis, Murat, and Hacksaw as well. Have a great night tonight. Thanks for being with us. Great to see everybody. And let's go say hi to Lee Hacksaw Hamilton through a WST raid.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily.